waterboarding. They're talking about wakeboarding. The thing about wakeboarding, every trick is an invert.
Backside.
Side, air railings.
A new dimension.
Everybody is going huge.
What do you think about waterboarding? I said, I like it a lot, but I don't think it's tough for no.
All right, here we go. We're here with another episode of the Grab Matters podcast. Today we got Dylan Mead, a.k.a. Backwards Boards, on the pod. How you doing, Dill?
Oh, we're doing good.
Good to hear. Good to hear. I'm going to go ahead and crack this beer real quick. You can crack that liquid death if you want.
Get the Licky D going.
Get the Licky D going. Trying to hydrate up here. So there's I don't know, we could kind of start anywhere. I feel like me and you go way back. So, yeah, I'll grab the sheet here. I think I want to start talking about how you got into wakeboarding. I know you were born in Michigan, which is where we're at right now, but you soon moved to North Carolina afterwards, correct?
Yeah, so I grew up in like Walled Lake on Commerce Lake. That's, for anyone who doesn't know, like 40 minutes outside of Detroit. Lived there till I was about 5 and grew up just like on the lake in a full-blown ski family. Dad was like hitting the slalom course on the regular. Definitely before I was born, when I was like a wee grom, he'd still get out there a decent bit. So he had me water skiing behind the boat long line when I was still 2 years old. So that was like, you know, they had me floating in the water before I could even, before I could walk or do any of that.
Okay, sick. And then, what was it, when you were like 5, you moved down to North Carolina?
Yeah, so I was like still into skiing. I would do that all the time. Like we still had the boat whenever we moved down to North Carolina. We didn't move on the water, but the community we were in had a lake, so we'd still get out there all the time. So yeah, moved to North Carolina when I was 5 and would still go out on the boat, but there was no slalom course where I was at. So it turned into more like just tubing or riding 2 skis, trying to like jump the wake and just like have fun every weekend when we'd go out. Parents had pretty much stopped like slalom skiing or taking any of that serious at that point.
Okay. So from the ages of 5 to, I guess, probably the next step in like your wakeboarding career, you would say would be like Hexagon, or is there a little bit more serious boat riding happening? You know,
I didn't ride a wakeboard at all until I was probably like 7th grade, so 12 or 13.
Okay.
There was this old so my brother grew up like, they're quite a bit older than me. I have 2 half brothers that are like about 20 years older than me. So I just had like my brother's old wakeboard in like the storage unit of our house. And I'd always look at it. It was this old, like in hindsight, actually like a super sick shape. It was like a 143, like liquid force with like directional fins, like one huge fin on the back and like a mellow one on the front. And like the boots, you needed soap to get in. And I was just trying to like jump the wake on the slalom ski for a little bit. And my dad's like, oh, like, why don't you just try your brother's wakeboard? And I was also kneeboarding quite a bit and just like standing up on the kneeboard all the time. So I was like, yeah, like that makes sense. Next step. Yeah, just like put on the wakeboard and just the first like 2 or 3 times we went out, I got up like a slalom ski just with the tips straight out of the water. And it was like harder than a slalom ski to get up. And I remember my buddy's dad, who was like not a boarder at all, was like, yeah, you start with it sideways. And I'm like, nah, you're fucking with me, Brian. Like, that's definitely not how you do it. You do not start sideways. And he like came out on our boat and got up and I was like, oh, son of a gun. Like he wasn't bullshitting. And and that just kind of started, and we had a Mastercraft Pro Star 197, so that's like a ski boat, center console. That's what you call that, right? Not center console, drive. But direct drive. There we go, yeah. So boat was made to, it was a super nice boat, but made to have like the tiniest wake possible, but I still had a ton of fun on it. Would just do like heel side wake to wakes, all the kooky grabs, suitcase grab, just grab every single piece of the board that I could. And then that same friend, his older sister, she would come out and ride the boat with us. And that was like my one kind of like wakeboarding friend when I was in middle school. My other friends would get up behind the boat, but that's kind of when they're like, all right, let's tube now. Well, we got up once.
Yeah, no one was really like trying to progress or anything. It was just something else fun to do, you know, behind the boat.
Yeah, and then there were a few people on that lake too. So, and then, yeah, around that time, probably like 7th grade, in the same community in North Carolina, and this is like central North Carolina, Pinehurst area. The actual town is West End. We moved back onto the water. So we had the boat like on a lift, and the neighbors were like a few years older than me. They had like a Centurion V-Drive boat, and they would go out and like ride and wakeboard. So there were some people to look up to, but I didn't know them well. That was more just like looking at them do like a sketchy tantrum, being like, oh my God, look at that. They're flipping. That's crazy.
Yeah, like observing what they're doing and like kind of showing you what may be possible, but you weren't really riding with them. So how long did you live on a lake for? It sounds like you said 7th grade. You guys moved on to the water.
Yeah, and then we moved up to Raleigh. That's where I finished high school. It just made sense. I was playing like pretty competitive hockey, so I was driving like over an hour, or my parents were driving me over an hour, like 2 days a week just to practice up in Raleigh, and that's where my dad's job was too at the time. So it just made sense to move up to Raleigh. That happened when I was in 10th grade, so I was like 14, 15, something like that. But so there was like a 5-year span there from like 7th to 10th grade, or 3, I guess. Yeah, and we've lived on the lake that whole time in like super nice house. It was very nice.
Okay, so it was just, you weren't like taking wakeboarding seriously by any means though, then you were more into hockey, kind of sounds like.
Yeah, for sure. And I still lived in that house the first few times I went to Hexagon. I would say when the flip really switched for me and it was like, this is sick, I'm like super into this, I went to Coble Ski School, which is somewhere in central North Carolina, like outside of Lillington or something maybe. And it was like more of a ski school. There was like some famous pro slalom skiers and barefoot people that like started and ran this camp. But for the most part, or for me anyway, they had like one wakeboard boat. So I went there. It was like a week-long sleepaway camp. I was probably like 12 or 13, and I went with one of my friends who was into wakeboarding, but kind of one of those kids where it's like, would wakeboard a bit and then be like, let's tube, or like, let's go fishing. I went there with him and went from like never landing a 360, just like switch 180s to like back rolls, tantrums, 360s both ways, maybe like some cab fives, and just like fell in love. I'd never ridden like a V-drive boat before, so I was just like going to the moon. All the instructors were like super hyped on me because I was the only one like really doing anything and like learning quick, because I just like I didn't know it at the time, but I'd like put in the work on the video side of things. I'd watched a ton of videos and just still didn't know how to do a 360. When someone was like, oh, just keep the handle closer, it was like, oh, sick. Like, how do you do a back roll? Like, oh, just hit the wake and like carry through on your edge. And it was like, oh, easy. And just started like picking stuff up. And I remember like the next week I went with that same friend to his beach house, and they had a center console, like a Carolina skiff, and he just wanted to fish the whole time. I'm like, nah, dude, let's wakeboard in the channel, like in this super choppy saltwater channel. And I was just like getting smoked on back rolls. And I was like hooked from that moment on.
Okay, so it was the camp that like really did it. What age were you when you went to?
I was probably 12 or 13.
Okay,
somewhere in there.
That's when. And when did you start playing hockey?
Super young. Like the year I moved to North Carolina, and like I had learned how to ice skate like on the lake when it would freeze over in Michigan, but I wasn't super into it. Like I was young, the skates hurt, it was cold, like yeah. But yeah, like came from a hockey family. My mom and dad were super stoked on it. Like mom especially, kind of just textbook like suburbs people, just like into sports, but like particularly into hockey and the Red Wings. So whenever we moved to North Carolina, I just started playing in this like crappy little like outdoor roller hockey rink like right by our house, and was just like hooked. That year I did like all the sports or whatever, like tennis, football, karate, and just like hockey stuck.
Yeah.
And and then by the time I was that age, like 12 or 13, I was like in 2 different like rec roller hockey leagues, like a rec ice hockey league, and playing like competitive travel ice hockey, and it was like 7 days a week.
Full on hockey.
Yeah, and my parents loved it too.
Okay.
And they definitely put in the miles.
For sure, any travel sport parent, whether it's hockey or soccer, I feel like you're putting in miles for the kid, like plus money. You know, it's not, hockey's definitely not cheap. Wakeboarding obviously isn't either, but hockey's got a lot of equipment involved. So you go to that camp, you kind of, like you said, that switch flipped, and you started to get really into wakeboarding. You came back. You're obviously.
Yeah, so I went there that summer, and maybe I'm off by like 1 year here, but I'm pretty sure I came back. It started to get cold, and then I saw one of my classmates. Like, this is when Instagram was like fresh. I probably had Instagram for like a month or two, and I knew what a cable park was just because I had like seen videos of the Philippines. Like, I would just YouTube like wakeboarding and be like, oh, people ride at cable parks. This is awesome. And one of my classmates posted like a photo of her riding at a cable park, and I hit her up and was like, yo, where's this at? And she's like, Benson, North Carolina, which was like just under 2 hours away from where I was at the time. And immediately I was like, oh, like we gotta go for sure. And I convinced my mom to take me on my like around my birthday. So September that year, like right as it was getting cold. So I was probably about to turn 13. That sounds about right. And yeah, went to Hexagon for the first time on my like Watson Classic. And yeah, full on like boat board molded on fins. And yeah, just like shredded the base away and did some sketchy board slides. And I felt exactly like Bob Sovin off Wake Brothers.
Yeah, that was probably right at that era, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was like, and that too, like when I started doing flips and that show was coming out and I'm just like an impressionable, like 13-year-old kid who's just like into pop culture stuff. It's like, oh, this is on MTV, like these guys, and like they had a nice house at the time. So I was like, oh, this is how pro wakeboarders are living. Like that's what I'm trying to do. Like, yeah, hockey seems cool, but like those guys are in the gym and shit. Like you don't see there's not one gym scene in Wake Brothers. Like they're just partying, hanging out with girls, and like having parties on the lake. Like that was on my alley.
They did make it look super, super sick. That's for sure.
Yep.
So you start riding at Hexagon. Did you get off the dock first try?
I believe so. Yeah,
Okay.
I think it was a jump start because like I had done the jump starts at Koval Ski School, and I like told the dude like, oh, like I've done this before, and he was like, he started to try to tell me. I'm like, I've done this before, and he was like, okay, didn't say another word, and like I fully went into like a mini rally, but I saved it and got out there, and it was sketchy, but yeah, we got it done.
Okay, cool. So Hex was probably pretty new at that time, though.
Yeah, it was. I think they had the Triple Crown the first year they were open, and it was probably like that fall. So it was probably the fall of the first year they were open.
Okay. So after that first time, obviously, I think everyone's first time riding cable after you ride like boat, it's like, this is crazy. This is so accessible. This is so easy. I can just like grab a handle, go around a bunch of times, let go, take a break, go back. How far did you live from Hexagon?
Yeah, that was the main like hurdle. It was just under 2 hours.
Okay.
So like even though we were driving for hockey all the time, it was like that was a haul for sure. And it was cold the first time we went. I was wearing like, old like jet ski bib wetsuits that my parents had that were just like dry rotted in the garage for 15 years. But yeah, we probably went once or twice that year, and then just all winter. I think around that time, my family, so I had a brother that lived or still lives out in Colorado, and I think we went and visited him that winter. So I was like doing some boarding in the winter and pretty hyped on it. I think I got into longboarding, like downhill. I was just trying to be on a board like all the time. That didn't really click for me. Had it clicked that was what I was trying to do, I probably just would have stuck with skateboarding. But skateboarding was hard. It hurt. Longboarding, like, you could just very incrementally slide longer and longer and go a little bit faster at a time. So, yeah, I just kind of did that whole winter and got stoked up on it. And then the next summer, when that rolled around, I was going out on the boat a lot. Like pretty much every day after school, my dad would take me out on the boat, super hyped. But I still wasn't getting any of those, like, flips or tantrums back behind our ski boat. I was just, like, begging the neighbors across the cove to take me out on their wakeboard boat, but they were like 16, 17. They were trying to like party, probably smoke a little weed, like bring some girls on the boat. They didn't want like the 13-year-old neighbor coming with them. Yep. So those sets were few and far between. But yeah, I would ride like our ski boat and then just like beg my parents to take me to Hexagon whenever possible.
Okay. I know you mentioned you started like kind of working at Hexagon at some point. I don't know when you can start working in North Carolina. Was it probably the next year when you were 14 or 15 you started working there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it was like right around that same time. Basically, my dad like came in my room one day. He's like, "You trying to go to the wake park?" And I was like, "Yeah, no question." We went, had a great time, and my dad's just like a very sociable, like chatty person. He's not just gonna like sit at the cable for 2 hours in silence and let his kid ride. He's gonna like make conversation and talk to people. So he started talking to John Bemis, who was running the wake park at the time. And then just like, yeah, so he kind of got that relationship going. The next day, dad comes back in the room like, "Hey, you trying to go back?" And I was like, "Oh, for sure." We went back, like, calluses were flying off, but he like talked to Bemis again. And at the end of that day, he was like looking at Bemis with like me in ear distance and was like, "You guys open same time tomorrow?" And he's like, "Yeah, you coming back tomorrow?" And he's like, "Yep." And we came back for like a third day in a row. And then my dad just talked to John and he was like, "So when are you going to give my kid a job?" I was 14 at the time. And John was like, "Well," this was like a Sunday probably. He's like, "Well, I mean, we have camps starting next week. If he wants to help out during camps, he can ride for free for like the rest of that day." That was like the deal. I work for like 8 hours and I get like 3 hours of riding. But that to me, that meant I was like, they were going to get me to the cable every day that week. So I was like, "Oh yes, without a doubt." And then like 2 days of that, of my mom driving like 2 hours, hanging out all day, or driving home, driving another 2 hours and driving there. this other guy who was helping out with the camps, Fabian, he lived about 30 minutes from my parents and worked there. So once that connection happened, I was there all the time. And then at the end of that week of camp, I learned how to drive the 2.0. And it was like the Friday of camp. I was done with camp. And I'm like, sick, John, I'm going to go ride. And he's like, oh, no, we need you to drive 2.0. It's like right now. And I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, we'll just pay you $10 an hour out of the register. I'm 14. This is like whatever, 10 years ago. So I'm like, oh, sick. Yeah, let's do that. And then I did a couple lessons, rode the rest of the day. He's like, you going to come back tomorrow? He's like, I'll just keep paying you out of the register. I'm like, yeah, that sounds sick.
Works.
Like, let's do that. And then we filled out some paperwork, and I was pretty much like the 2.0 Grom for like the rest of the season.
Okay, so it started off, you weren't officially hired at first there, but you kind of worked your way in, and then
They just needed people, and I was there, and they're like, oh, he knows how to drive the 2.0.
yeah.
Yep.
So who were some of the guys at Hexagon that were, quote unquote, like the OGs of the scene? Some of the good riders, around that area at that time.
Yeah. I mean, John Bemis was definitely riding quite a bit. He was like, he had like a pro stint down in Orlando. And most of the guys were mostly coming from boat, but some of them had snowboard backgrounds, so they picked up rails pretty quick. But I would say the main one was Mark Rugula. That was like the dude. There was a lot of people who were pretty good, but everyone was kind of like, Mark, like, singing his praises. And then this other guy, Hot Sauce, like him and Mark were roommates for a long time. He was super cool, just like very sociable dude. Like when you think of Hexagon, like you think of Hot Sauce. He was there all the time. And then just like name a few others, like Rob Norman, Tripp and Quinn Lancaster. Just some local guys that had like full-time careers doing other stuff. Oh, and Graham Knott for sure. He had Six Style. But yeah, all those guys, they just had full-time careers, but would come to the cable and definitely like made it look good. They would make their own little GoPro edits. Hot Sauce had like a crew at the time called Get Weird. He'd like make t-shirts and stuff, and they'd make videos. So like I was so into that. That was like the best thing ever. And I remember at the time I would like get home from school or whatever and like refresh Alliance, refresh Transworld Wakeboarding or whatever that website was called, go to Union, go to the cable mag, and then search on Google like Hexagon like Wake Park and Gyptopia Wake Park, if Gyptopia was open at the time. I think it was, but every day I would do that, and just like anyone who posted like a shitty GoPro POV edit, I was watching it.
Yeah, just consuming it all as much as you can. So how long did your time at Hex last? Because I'm not sure when they closed or when any of that happened, but how long were you there for?
Yeah, so I was there that first summer, or like my first summer when I was 14, and that was like my first job. That was sick, like just having a little cash in my pocket. And then I worked there full time the next year as well. So I must have been 15. There were some other coworkers that weren't too far. And about halfway through that summer, or the timeline gets a little fuzzy, but that's when I moved to Raleigh. So then I was only about 40 minutes away, and some of my coworkers lived in Raleigh. So that was like way more accessible. Also part of the reason I was like pretty okay and stoked to move to Raleigh.
Yeah.
So I worked there like that kind of started camp year, and then the following year. And whenever it started getting cold, there were like some tension going on between the property owners and like John and Paula, the owners of the cable, because they were just leasing out that property. And and another local rider like Willie, he was like my same age, and that was like, it was like my running mate at the time. That was like kind of like did everything together there for a year or two. But basically, long story short, like he had his license at the time. We like asked John, my boss, if we could like put in a handrail under the 2.0 and like open the cable for the day. And he was just like, no. He's like, use Will's winch and hit it somewhere else. And we're like, okay. But we got a set of keys. We opened up the cable and we put the handrail in. We drilled it to the 2.0 dock and put it out into the middle of the pond and hit it a few times. It was all good. Of course, being 15, I put it on my Snapchat story. Because like, what else am I going to do? John wasn't on there, but yeah, and then I guess it got like brought up in court or something like the next day because like the property owned, they just happened to have a court date trying to figure out the property dispute, and the property owner's like, yeah, these kids were here, blah, blah, blah. And then John is like telling that to like one of the other local guys, and he's like, well, yeah, look at Dylan's story. And so I kind of officially got fired from Hexagon. I was not welcome back. I got a phone call that was like, yo, I told you you couldn't do this, and you came and did it. Like, are you guys kidding me? Like, you are not welcome back. And I was bummed for sure. Hexagon was a huge part of like my riding and what really got me stoked on wakeboarding. But at the same time, Gyptopia was a thing, and I knew there was a chance I could go live there for the summer. My parents probably wouldn't have said yes had I not been like, quote unquote, banned from Hexagon that summer.
Yeah. So before we get to Gyptopia, I mean, what was your parents' reaction? Did you just immediately go tell them like, hey, I don't work, they basically fired me. I'm not welcome back anymore because I fucked around
I
with
was
the rail.
I was working on, I'd probably just turned 16. Me and my dad were changing out the brakes on my car. And my mom's like, Dylan, like, come answer your phone. John's called you like 15 times. And I think I told her that like we put that handrail in and weren't supposed to. So then she's like, how'd that go? And I'm like, not well. But I mean, they weren't like super bummed. They're like, you're going to have to like apologize at some point, like when the time is right, this and that, which I did. And it was like, the bridge got built back and it wasn't a big thing after some time had passed.
Yeah.
Like pretty much that whole summer. I don't think I went back that entire summer.
Okay.
But yeah, they were just like, not stoked that I did that or it happened, but also I was generally raised with like a pretty loose leash and kind of like, yeah, like try not to fuck up. But if you do fuck up, like own it, say you're sorry, like figure out like what you did wrong and like why you pissed people off. And that's kind of how they handled stuff.
Okay. So.
And I guess around that same time, because that same summer I was working at Hexagon, or maybe that fall, as it was getting cold and ice hockey started back up, that was my last year playing competitive ice hockey. Because during the weekends, we would be traveling to like Richmond, Virginia, or Florida, or Michigan, or wherever to play hockey, which was always like, I'd always look forward to that in the past. But this year I was getting a little older. People were taking it more seriously. And it was always fun for me. Like guys were starting to work out, trying to like seeing forward into like playing juniors, college, or like trying to go to the show, because it was like the best team you could play on in North Carolina.
Yeah.
But that was just never really my vibe. I just wanted to play with kids who were good, so I played on that team. But yeah, it was just every weekend traveling, wanting to be at the cable park, but having to be moving around to these different ice hockey tournaments or games. I wasn't really that stoked on it. So it was like pretty obvious during that it was like, this is my last year.
Yeah, you realized pretty quickly that the hockey thing was, at the end of its run there.
Went out with a bang too. Got a natty championship.
Really?
Yeah, we won nationals. It was like a big deal too. They like no team from North Carolina had ever won nationals. Like our some stuff went on with the coaching, and like our coach who finished the season and coached us through the national tournament was like he like spent some time at Boston College and was like he knew the deal. He was the GM for like the juniors program.
Okay.
So it was cool. That was like a perfect like just way to say goodbye. It was awesome.
Sick. Did you score a goal in that game?
No, but I definitely blocked some shots. That was my vibe. Take like the big hits for the boys, block a couple shots, maybe get some like nice cross ice passes. I played defense,
Okay.
so like the wingers liked me for sure because I'd set them
Team
up
player.
nice.
Team player.
Yeah,
I like
I'd
it.
hit them. Yep.
Okay, so you're out at Hex, and you knew Jib was a thing, obviously.
I guess like just something else we can touch on that like I always thought was really cool. I just happened to come up at a good time in wakeboarding, especially like movie and film wise. I didn't really realize it, but that summer when I was 15 and worked at Hexagon, that's when the debut came out. So the debut comes out, I see Gyptopia, it looks amazing. There was even a premiere in my local shop, and like all those guys I mentioned were there, like Raph Jerome, Daniel Grant, even Andy might have been there, but they were, throwing out stuff. I think I still have like a debut hat signed by like Daniel Grant and Raph. Holy shit, I haven't thought about that in
Damn,
so long.
you gotta bust
I
that
should
out.
have brought that.
Yeah.
That'd been sick. But yeah, so like that was really cool. And then at the time too, this is when like Wesley Mark Jacobson had spent his first summer at Jib, was the summer before I went there and the summer I was at Hexagon. So like I just wanted to be a Jib the whole time. Like I was never into skating and didn't know too much about street snowboarding, but right away when I saw like Shredtown winch clips or and then I think Drop the Gun came out that same year.
Yeah, Drop the Gun was
year
2014.
after
Yeah.
or something. So there were winch clips and like street style stuff going around, and then them just like building handrails and sketchy setups at Jib. That's what like really got me hyped up. And it was like, yeah, this is sick. And that's why we like drilled that handrail into the dock. And like I'd be moving picnic tables out there when like there wasn't anyone who would really yell at me. I'd like put a picnic table in the ground box or something for the day. It was like really stupid, but I just wanted like something sketchier than like unit plastic.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, you're seeing that jib's a thing, and it's the summer, you're 16. You kind of talk to your parents about, hey, I want to move out there and work. You talked to Jib, I'm guessing, before.
Yeah, there was this. They had this thing, like a pretty extensive interview thing. It was probably like 20 or 30 questions. I wrote like 8 or 9 pages on it. Some of it was like more serious, just like, what's your experience, blah, blah, blah. Some of it's like favorite movie quote, favorite band, stuff like that. Just kind of making sure that you fit the vibe. So I filled all that out. And then my dad was like, he was down with it, but not like, this was around the time I like started smoking weed and like partying a little more and was like getting caught for that here and there. So he was kind of like, am I really going to go let my like son live at this like hippie wonderland, like wake park and just like smoke weed all summer? Like he knew the deal. So he made me like every weekend, the last like month of school or so, I would, his buddy was like a building contractor. So I'd just work with like a different one of the trades. So I'd like be doing carpentry for like 2 or 3 weeks. And then, I was like working with the masons, just like hauling cinder blocks around, like just full days, Saturdays and Sundays, helped me save up some money. And like, that was my dad's way of being like, this is what you want to do with your life. This is what it's going to be. And I'm like, oh, if this means I get to wakeboard, this is sick. Like, I'm totally down. Let's get it.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the way that like everyone, it just worked out for everyone. Yeah.
Okay. I kind of want to just hear about how you moved. You know, you drove up to Jib for the first time. When was your first time going to Jib? Do you remember kind of
Yeah, I
pulling
definitely
up?
remember my very first time. This is like early when I was still at Hexagon because I was still on a liquid force. I was on a like the deluxe, the old one, the like orange one. Probably the second year they had them. And we were coming back from a hockey tournament. It was just me and my mom, like coming down from Richmond. And we just pulled into Jib. And if you've ever been to Jib, they had this giant ass tie-dyed like satellite to like mark the road. We just drove like right past it. And we're like, where is this place? Turned around, saw the satellite, and we're like, wow, we really blew that. But we turn around, we pull in the road to Jib. And I'm like 14 at the time. So this is like before that summer Hexagon had even happened. Yeah, we pulled down there, and it's just like Casey Malloy at the time, who is now Clark Davis's wife, and they were dating at the time, but they were kind of like the vibes of the park. So you roll up, and it's her with her like IMAX setup running off a generator out of a van. This is like before the bar was fully built, and you like watch their safety video where they're like not wearing like vests or helmets and any of it, and yeah, and you filled out the waiver. And then they're just like, yeah, and like a driver will come, and then you just see like a camper door fly open, and some like foreign guy starts like walking down with a controller in his hand. Probably, you know, there's probably like clouds leaving the camper and stuff. They're just chiefing a bunch of weed in there, and cruise down. And yeah, the first time it was just a solo sesh, and it was super fun. I loved it. I was definitely really scared, but I was doing all the same tricks I knew how to do, but just way more hyped up about them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I would come back. I probably came back 2 or 3 more times that summer that I was at Hexagon all the time, just with the Hexagon crew. They would kind of like let me know, like, yo, we're going. And I was like super down. I remember one time my leg was really fucked up, and I was like going to work at Hexagon but not riding. And they're like, oh, we're going to Jib. And I wasn't like, I smoked weed, but that was kind of the extent of my partying. But I like knew there were some oxys in a drawer. And I was like, oh, this is like, I got to do whatever I can do to get any laps at all at Jib, and just like popped a couple of those puppies and was like good shredding all day. Like I was committed. I like wanted the laps at Jib bad that whole summer. So that was super sick. And then there were a few times toward the end of that summer, Will E got his license. So me and Will would go up. I remember one time we went up and like spent the night there. And fully like we just set up our little tent or whatever, and we're sleeping in there. Like 2 a.m, it's like Niles and like Wesley Mark Jacobson and like Alex and Clark, like the crew at Jib at the time, just like ripping donuts with like little like mini pit bikes and dirt bikes like around our tent, like opening the tent. Like I think like Ollie Broomland's like fucking pouring like Jack in the tent, just like they're all fucking with us. They're drunk as fuck at like 2 a.m. Like I was kind of down to go party, but Will was a little more straight edge, so I was like, I guess we'll just keep sleeping, whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of what my early Jib experience was like. So I was hyped to go there and wakeboard, but also as just like dumb 15, 16-year-old, like I wanted to go there and party. Like I wanted to be fully
freedom.
off the leash. Like I get to wakeboard and like live not at home and have some money in my pocket. Like hell yeah. And working at Jib was like work to ride. They give you a place to live. There was a kitchen there, so you get like 3 chicken tenders a day. And yeah, and then that was that. And then this guy who's still in the scene today, Patrick Long, he had like a pressure washing business. And he still does, and he's like a big part of the NC scene. So he would kind of help out the guys at Jib, and you'd go pressure wash with him 1 or 2 days a week. Not really do anything, just like be there, at least me at 16. I would just like let him talk to me and earn a little money on the side that way, like just beer and buy like a few vegetables or something.
Cool. So you were living in you said they give you a camper to live in and you get some fried food a day.
Yeah, full on like super old shitty campers. They were amazing. Like I was living in this old Winnebago. The crew at Jib when I was there, Clark had left at this point. Some stuff went down with the ownership of Gyptopia. That's not really my story to tell, but you should definitely get Clark on here one day too. But yeah, some stuff went down where Clark left. So Alex was still there holding it down.
Alex Hamrick.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the vibes were still intact somewhat of like of Jib's heyday, but this was like the last year. After that, it just fully went to shit. And they were a little whack without Clark there. But yeah, it was me, my buddy Alex Timms, who was like my same age, who lived like not far from me in Raleigh, and we like became friends at Jib. This guy from Georgia, Nathan Smith, and then Franco from Argentina. He just spent the summer at Elevated as well, so I got to like re-link up with him. That was super cool. Henry from Estonia, he was like friends with Simon. I like had seen Simon on like, you know, Instagram or like YouTube or whatever, but he's like, oh yeah, like I know Simon. And I was like, yeah, dude, his style's sick. And I remember him being like, dude, he's gonna be so hyped when I get back and tell him that somebody at Jib was hyped on his style.
Oh shit. Keep going.
Smooth. But yeah, that was kind of the vibes. Like that was the crew the first year, and it was just me and Alex Timms, the other 16-year-old in this camper. We'd just like kind of rip like little gravity bong hits like all day, and like, you know, like be just on the edge of function, just like go out. You know, we're working at a wake park. The bar's not that high.
Yeah.
You just got to drive the cable basically. But yeah, it's just like wake up, crack some eggs on the griddle, get like an egg Sammy going, probably take some solo laps with just me and Timms. So like at Gyptopia, you didn't have to do turnarounds, and there was also like a dock you could pull yourself to at the top of the pool, so you could stay dry during your sessions.
What do you mean you didn't have to do turnarounds?
There was like a turnaround platform.
Oh, you'd ollie onto.
Yeah, you just
cable.
like pull just like you would at like the end of any other 2.0 pool, like if you're riding Lake Ronix or something. It was like that at both ends.
Gotcha.
So you could stay really dry. So like we were living there, we wouldn't usually fall in the morning, so we'd just take like a 20-30 minute set and just like pass the wireless controller off like while still strapped in and just like go back and forth until like one of us fell or a customer showed up. And then the vibes there were really funny. Like sometimes people would show up that we were hyped on driving, but a lot of times it was like, you know, it's work to ride, so you don't get paid more for like actually working. It's just the same either way. So like if one person shows up, like they're not getting any breaks at all, because you're just trying to hammer them into the ground so they leave and get out of there so we can go take more like GB hits and like ride more ourselves. Okay. That's the goal at all times. So they're like, yeah, can you get a break? And you're like, yeah. All right, here we go.
Oh my God. So is there like a manager or anything, or is it pretty much just like they check in and then they get sent to you guys and that's
I mean, we were the ones doing the check-ins too. I mean, I was like pouring shots and shit when I was 16.
What was the bar called there?
Well, that was a different vibe. That was bar 119. There's some stories on that too. Maybe we can get into that next.
Let's go.
All right. There was like there was a bar at the cable, and it was just a little like food and bar grill. Not a lot of partying went down. Maybe if there was a contest, people would hang out there. Yeah. But there was a whole separate like bar that I guess got bought with the land for the cable park, or like whenever Andy Critch, the owner of the land, got it all, he got the bar too. So basically, the guy who financially owned Gyptopia also owned this bar that you could walk to. It was like maybe a quarter mile away, like a decent walk, but if you're drunk, you're walking. Yeah, so like that wasn't far, and it was just like, if you ever like went to Gyptopia, you know, it's basically in the middle of nowhere, North Carolina. It's in Samora, North Carolina. Like there's not a major town within like 20 miles either way. There's like a small town, like maybe 20 minutes away. So just this like redneck hick kind of like cowboy bar out in the middle of nowhere, and it'd be like us and the wakeboard friends, and then sometimes there'd be big crowds, but most of the time it'd just be like 10 to 15 people, like from age like 35 to 55, and then like me and my 16-year-old friend and like all the wakeboard crew just getting like super rowdy. And that was kind of like the vibe, you know, just like go to the liquor store before, get like the shittiest handle of like whiskey or whatever we could find, just like the cheapest, biggest bottle. Like, what can we get with $20? And like the Estonian fish would be like, I got you, and just like come back with like a bottle of shit. Me and Tim's would polish it like that night. We'd like whatever, roll up to the bar, hang out, party for the night, maybe like make out with a 40-year-old. Oh my god. And then fully just like, oh, I think I had a girlfriend at the time, so maybe not that. But yeah, and then just like, I remember like many nights just like sprinting back to the camper afterwards. Cause you know, you're 16, you're drunk. It's whatever, 2, 3 in the morning whenever the bar closes, and just like a full sprint back to the camper. Cause like, it's so much fun to run like as fast as you can when you're drunk.
100%. Yeah. Every time you leave the bar, every time I left the bar when I was in college, I'd just run home.
Yeah. And then, there's like some random potholes in the field and stuff, so you try your best to avoid that. I remember, man, I can't remember who it was, but after one of the contests, like everyone was up there. Oh, and then Daniel Hughes, Courtney Hayes, those were some more people that were around in the Hexagon days, and they would come up to Gyptopia and party quite a bit. But anyway, it was like a weekend that everyone was up there. There was a contest or something. Everyone partied at the bar and was like running home, or we were chasing each other around afterwards. And there was like a slack line set up somewhere, and someone got fucked up by the slack line. It might have been Courtney Angus.
Like,
I can't
ran
totally
into it?
remember. Yeah, like full sprint, like pitch black at night, just like got smoked. And then just like some other random stories. There was like a Red Bull event there one time, and they like bring their like Red Bull DJ truck.
Yeah.
And we're like trying to break into it, can't figure it out, so we give up. And then like in the morning, it's like almost in the lake. It was like at the top of the hill the day before, and it's like almost in the lake. And we're like, dude, how did that happen? And we're just all kind of talking to each other all day. And Alex is like, oh yeah, I figured out how to climb in through the sunroof, and couldn't find the keys, but it was manual, so I just took the parking brake off and didn't really know what was going on, so I hit it back, and yeah, it was like inches from going into the lake. Yeah, and then Alex had like a pretty sick like BMW, just like a Beamer at the time too. And definitely one night, like me and Tim's, the other 16-year-old, just like came back pretty drunk and like just like did a bunch of donuts in like some random ass field with his Beamer. Like that's what my summer at Jib was. And it was a lot of wakeboarding too. Like wakeboarding every day, like with my best friend basically, and like the whole crew up there was like good and solid, and there were like pros still coming through on a regular basis. Mark would come up. I remember we'd make setups there, and we'd be like, all right, we got to film on it before Mark gets here, because he's gonna like fuck it up and make all of our hits look like nothing. And that was the vibe. Just like build something during the day, whatever. Patrick would come with some tools, the guy who had the pressure washing business. We'd like build a sketchy ramp or something like that. Yeah, and
just
then just like
fucking around, partying, wakeboarding a ton.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of pros that did come through there, though.
For sure. And then a big kind of like breakout moment for me, or when I was like really fell in love. This is before I lived there, but there was a contest there called Gibberish. So I was 15. This is like right when I started getting good at Hexagon, or like decent, like landing back threes every try, maybe some back fives, and like had some style on rails. I like knew what a Zeech was at this point. Yeah, I was like on a slingshot board, so I had some direction. I had something that I thought was cool, which was basically like a few of the guys at Hexagon, Mark Rugel at Graham Knott, and then like Wesley Jacobson at Jib, and like Niles Johnson, who just like had super sick like steezy style. Yeah, but I rode in this contest, and it was just a super sick lineup. It was, especially for being that young, like Courtney Angus, Blake Bishop, Wesley Mark Jacobson, Krabby Trabby from Chucktown, John Dreiling was there. I think he rode in the contest. Gunther came down. Keenan Allen, who was like pretty fucking good when he wakeboarded. I don't know what happened to him. He was like an Orlando dude, but he was really good at the time. Mark rode in the contest, and a couple other local dudes, but it was solid. I was pretty much the worst one in the contest for sure, but I ended up like making it through to finals, and like a couple of the people on that list like didn't, so I was like all hyped up about that. And I hung with everyone for sure. Like my riding didn't look out of place, like next to Blake Bishop and Gunther. So like that was sick. And then like we definitely all partied that night and like went to bar 119, and you know, it was pretty loose out there. I forget how I got in. I think I got in with like my buddy Lee's ID that said I was like 32. He just like threw it over the fence, like right in front of the bouncer at the time. And I just like scrounged around for it on the floor and like held it up, and they were like, all right, whatever, kid.
Get the fuck in here, kid. Oh man. So I mean, I don't know if there's anything else you want to touch on with Jib. I know obviously you mentioned it went downhill, after you left. And I don't know if it's still operating. I feel like I looked a couple of years ago and it looked like you could maybe make a reservation.
That's probably what the website still says. Okay. I saw the still owner of it, Andy Critch, at Elevated not too long ago. He seems like he's doing good, but I don't think it's been maintained. He'd probably take your money if you tried to give it to him, but yeah, I doubt the LLC's even been renewed or whatever they had going there. But yeah, pretty much at the tail end of that year, Alex also left. So then the two guys with all the stoke, again, like not my story to tell, but kind of cliff notes, like two guys had all the stoke, one guy had all the money. Guys with all the stoke basically made it happen, got everything done. This is Alex Hamrick and Clark Davis. And guy with all the money kind of like fucked him over a little bit, promised him some stuff and didn't deliver, and they ended up leaving. And once all the stoke was gone, a lot of the local guys stopped showing up, screw checks stopped being done, and it stayed open another year or two, but like you were catching a screw if you rode there like 2 days in a row basically the next summer. So it kind of started just started weaning off, And then I'm trying to think if there's anything else like memorable from Jib.
Any good slams you took? I mean, that was definitely pretty
sure.
gnarly
I mean, you saw that life jacket I'm rocking now, how it's missing like half the pads. Yeah, that's just from getting like smoked at Jib and that's not me cutting them out. That's like pads got ripped out while I was riding Jib. Like maybe I caught a screw or just got super smoked. I remember there was one setup, and Courtney got super fucked up on this one too. At Courtney Angus, her like hip was like the gnarliest bruise I'd ever seen. But basically, it was like a kicker to a down rail in the pool, and you could also hit the rail as an up rail going up. But then it was like a close out of the kicker. And I was going up, and I remember like, oh, I'm falling off on the kicker side, but I'm good. I'm gonna jump over it. Like we're good here. And the next thing I knew, I had my thumb up in the air saying I was okay, and I was like standing up in the pool, and I'm like, why is my thumb up? Why am I all wet? Shit, what am I even doing here? And I was like, maybe I'm not good. I remember saying that, and they're like, what? Are you good or not? And I'm like, what are we doing here? And was just like fully
concussed. Like.
Yeah, I knew the deal right when I fell to like tell everyone I wasn't drowning or like hadn't broke my neck, but like, oh yeah, bell got rung heavy. I remember a night before a contest too, I had this really gnarly ingrown toenail that was fucking like just being super annoying all year, and just somebody showed up with like a bottle of Crown, and there were like some pliers and a razor blade, and I just went to town, took a couple shots, and just dug that thing out of there. That was that was what was going down, because bar 119 was only open on like Saturday, so other times we'd just hang out at the bar, and if some people were there camping, they'd be there and they want to party and drink. Like 16 hangovers aren't a thing. Let's go. Sounds sick. And, at the time, like, Ethan Weaver would come up, and, like, his stepdad, Debo, would bring him, and they'd bring their camper and, like, cook dinner for everyone, and it was always super sick. But, yeah, he was full-on Grom status at the time, like, 12, 13, probably even younger than that. And, so that was just, like, super good time. Kind of the crew that's still around at Elevated today basically all kind of sharpened their teeth and got going at Hexagon and Jib. It's cool that it's, like, Elevated's really able to like capitalize off of the scene that was already there.
Yeah, the groundwork that was like laid.
Yeah, so when new kids do show up, there's like someone and something to look up to. It's cool.
Yeah, that's really cool. So yeah, you were 16 at Jib, and then I think you moved up to Action the next summer.
Yeah,
am I right there?
Yep. So I went to Jib the summer between my junior and senior year of high school. Went back to high school and was just not motivated at all. Like I had just spent a summer wakeboarding all year, making some money. I was still like, my parents are paying for my car and my phone bill and stuff, but like I had more money in my pocket than when I showed up there. And I'm like, oh, there's this like whole other side of life that like exists that I knew nothing about before this. So I went back to high school and was just so unmotivated. Just wanted to be back at Jib. I was depressed, didn't know why. Yeah, I was like on a high all summer, just like wakeboarding, getting good. Like if I got hurt, I was still riding the next day. Like nothing was stopping me, And so I went back to high school just with like out a lot of just not much stoke, and was like, fuck, like, what am I going to do next year? Like, Jib kind of went to shit. Hexagon's, maybe it was still open at the time, but it was probably on its way out. The property owner stuff had finally kind of run its course. Finn Bullock, like, his mom and John owned or ran the park, and he was getting really good at the time. So they just, their eggs, they had stuff to do elsewhere. So the park just kind of faded out, anticipated for one reason or another. And there was just nowhere to ride in North Carolina, really. And my grandparents had a house on Gun Lake. So I was like, oh, sick. I have the rest of my life figured out. I'm going to move to I'm going to move to Grand Rapids for one summer and work at the cable park there. Perfect. Shot, action, and email. And like within a couple days, got an email back and was like, yeah, like probably not going to happen. I think we're all staffed up, like good to go. And I'm like, oh, well, I guess I'm just going to tell everyone I'm going to the Philippines then and really have no plan. So that's what I did. They're just like, what are you doing after high school? I'm like, I'm going to the Philippines. They're like, what? For how long? I'm like, I don't know. That's what I'm doing, though. I'm going to the Philippines. I don't fucking know. And then with probably like a month or two left of school, or I actually ended up like graduating early and working for a bit. So I like worked through that summer after graduating high school. I was still 17 at the time. Just like working at a local bagel shop. My dad went up to visit my grandparents, and he just like stopped by Action Wake Park before it was open, because this is just like a very him thing to do, and just like rolled up, and it just happened to be the day that they were training all of their employees. Were you there this day?
I was there, yeah.
Oh, no way.
Yeah,
That's
I was there.
sick. Yeah, and Scott was there too, Scott Fuerta. And my dad started talking to him, and was basically, the way he said it, he's like, yeah, like not many of the staff members wanted to climb up the tower. And he was just like, oh, like my kid climbs up the tower. Like he's been doing it for a few years now since he was 15. He's worked at like a bunch of different parks. And Scott's like, oh yeah, like I remember that kid emailing us. He's like, maybe I'll email him back. And yeah, like a few days later, they're like, if you want to come work out here, you totally can. Talk to my grandparents. They were cool with me living. They had like a little apartment above the garage, and they were like a year or two out of assisted living. So it was, I definitely wasn't taking care of them by any means, but it was mutually beneficial for sure to have like someone else in the house, and it gave me a place to live like on a lake near a wakeboard park. So yeah, that was kind of what happened. I moved up here and was hot shit because I was the only one who'd ridden cable on a regular basis in Michigan.
Yeah, okay, so I do have it on here. I forgot what I exactly wrote, but basically describe what it's like to show up to a brand new wake park in an area that's never had a wake park before and be the best rider by far. Like, not even close.
Oh, Derek's going to get offended.
Okay, you're right. Derek was there. I'm sorry, Derek. I forgot about you. But, I mean, he didn't ride as much cable as you did at that point. Like, you had been riding cable for a long time. You were definitely, like, your style was significantly better than everybody else, and you were just leagues ahead of
it was sick. The ego was getting pumped up big time. I mean, I loved it. Like, you know, I was still young. I had that summer at Jib, so like I definitely wasn't mature by like any means, but for like a 17-year-old, I'd graduated high school. I'd like worked a couple like actual normal jobs. I'd spent a summer living away from home. I was living not with my parents at that point, so I felt like somewhat independent. And yeah, it was just sick showing up to the park and kind of having some lines dialed. The setup that year, everything was like super mellow. So coming from Jib, where like if you come off a rail early, you're going into rocks. It was super easy to commit to like a 450 or like a back three onto a rail, because it was just all unit stuff and it was all tiny. I was the only one who like understood how to like really hit a safety and just run into the bitch and like fly up in the air.
100%.
Yeah, and just everyone at the park was super stoked, and for like a month or two, I was that kid. Derek caught up pretty quick because it pissed him off that he wasn't the best one, without a doubt.
He was definitely motivated, that's for sure.
Yeah.
What was like your daily routine in your life like that summer at Action?
Yeah, so definitely still smoking like decent bit of weed. Wake up, I had an apartment above my grandparents' garage, so yeah, like wake up, make some breakfast, cruise down to the cable if I had to work. I think I had a key to the cable that year too, so I was like opening it up, doing maintenance and stuff at 17, which like right on. People have been trusting me the keys to the cable for way too long, for sure. They should have learned earlier, right when I put in that handrail. But yeah, so roll up, whatever, unlock the shop, do some maintenance. That year it wasn't ran like as much like your normal cable park. It was more like a legitimate business. So if you were scheduled for 8 hours, you were probably working for 8 hours, even if there was nobody at the cable.
Yeah.
So work as long as I was going to work, post a Snapchat of the empty dock, telling all 3 people that I had on Snapchat that lived in Michigan to come to the cable because it was empty. Yeah, and then whatever, get off at 6 and ride for a few hours with like you or Adam Marks. There were definitely, yeah, like you were saying the other day, there were a lot of times there was nobody there at like 6:30 on a weekday.
Yeah.
So like we would just ride, the 3 of us, just 2 people ride and film, one drives like while still soaking wet in their life jacket and helmet, and then you just like rotate and keep going like that. And that was kind of just going on the regular. And then, yeah, cruise home, go to this local, and I was living on Gun Lake, so that was like 30, 40 minutes away.
Yeah.
It was like a little tourist lake basically. But yeah, get never like really cooked food besides breakfast food. I remember like pan-searing my first egg that year, like not on a hibachi style grill because that's how it was a jib, like in a pan and being like, whoa, I'm such an adult. But yeah, so get home, get a sub from like the local pizza shop that was like right across the street, smoke a little bit of weed, look at the lake until the sun goes down, which is like 10 p.m. here, which is crazy to me growing up in North Carolina. And then kind of repeat. And then I was hanging out with Adam Marks and like all of his friends. I was spending some nights at his house, and that was cool. That kind of my personality grew a lot that year too. He was like in a punk band and like real into music and stuff, and more like it was the first time I'd ever heard somebody use the word angsty. And not only did he use it, he used it as a positive way to describe himself. And I'm like, damn, I guess I'm pretty angsty too. And like a light bulb kind of went off that I'm like, wow, that is how I am, and I'm not super proud of it, but also, like, I'm not motivated to change it. So, like, yeah, I guess I'm angsty, and kind of like, yeah, I'm just going to run with this. Like, got a little more into punk music, and yeah, was just kind of more down with, like, rebellion, and definitely started to cause a little bit of a ruckus at Action. Just about rules that I thought were silly. You know, 17-year-old angsty teen, like, oh, you can't use wax here, this rule, that rule, just like, nope, rebel. Like, make a ruckus out of this. Like, I'm going to wax my board. Like, they were talking about, like, oh, no wax allowed. Oh, we're going to sell wax, but you can only use our wax. And I'm like, well, if you do that, I'm going to come and pass out candles. Just, like, just for no reason, just, like, being a little shithead.
Yeah.
Yeah, me and you became friends. I remember the first time we met, I wasn't getting, like, heavy kook vibes, but like a little bit. You were wearing one of your textbook outfits from that year. You probably the Christmas tree one. And 100%. You were just like, yeah, dude, like I'm Hunter. I'm super stoked about this summer. And you were just like real positive. And like, I'm like hitting my angsty rebellion phase heavy. And I'm like, fucking loser.
I was jacked, dude. I was so jacked that summer. I was the first time I ever wakeboarded like on a consistent basis, and I've wanted to my entire life. And I was like, let's fucking go. Like, this is so fun. I'd ride until my arm fell off, basically. And I remember watching you. I was like, dude, how are you so good at wakeboarding? Like, such good style too. It was crazy. I was just looking up to you right away, even though you were, much younger than me. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's much else you want to touch on with your days that first summer at Action.
Yeah, it was cool. It definitely was, I feel like I have a really wide base in wakeboarding for not having a ton of followers on Instagram or not like being a top dude or like a really well-known guy. I can pretty much go anywhere in the country, or really it feels like the world, and know people at the local cable, like the guys who rip at whatever cable. Like I know people or have a lot of mutual friends, and that summer at Action was cool. That was my first year kind of expanding my like base into the Midwest. So that was super cool just to get like, I met you, Derek, Adam Sinclair, Scott. Some other people were coming through on a regular basis. Like Alex Ames was there wake skating all the time. Marco Ross. There was a decent wake skate scene. I was wake skating a decent bit at the time. I think I like stole a wake skate from Jib and brought it up there because I was like, fuck this place. Yeah, that's really all I can think about Action. Just kind of continued to sharpen the teeth and just like, again, still no real plan really at all, like with my life. People at Action be like, well, what are you doing after this? Because I was like 17, like what, that's what you ask a 17-year-old. And it was like going to the Philippines, I don't know, yeah. And I was just living fully in the moment, just day by day, just trick by trick, lap by lap. And yeah, really the way it should be when you're that age, or at least it felt right at the time. And in hindsight, I wouldn't really do it any different. So.
Yeah, definitely. So where did you go after action? Because I know you
Yeah.
spent some time out west, but I don't know immediately where you went after action.
Yeah, so basically I cruised back home to my parents still had their apartment in Raleigh, North Carolina, and I had finally turned 18. My birthday was in September. So it's like pretty hard to get a decent paying job before you're 18. Like just to make anything more than $10 an hour, especially 10 years ago, it was difficult. So I cruised back home and was like, well, all my friends are either going to college or they're like doing trade jobs or this or that. Like maybe I should try to like make some money and just see what's up with that. Didn't really know what to do. Basically just got home and started to apply to every job on Craigslist that was offering more than 14 an hour. Ended up getting a job finishing concrete. So basically like concrete would already be poured, or we'd go into like a school where you like rip up the carpet and then like grind away all the glue and then make like basically the floor of like a Walmart or a Lowe's hardware store where it's all shiny and polished. So that was cool. It was just like manual labor job. I really enjoyed it, working bunches of overtime. I did that for about 3 months and saved up a good amount of money. Was just living at home, not really spending any, saved whatever, a few grand, 5, 8 grand, something like that. Yeah, and it was feeling good. I enjoyed the work. I definitely wasn't like, wow, my life is completely miserable or anything the whole time. But I'm like, man, all I want to do is like travel and wakeboard, and I have this money, but I can't do this because of this job. And like that was a huge revelation for me at 18. Just that had not clicked, that like if you want a job where you consistently have hours, you cannot randomly take time off to go wakeboard and travel. I just didn't realize you couldn't have it both ways, or at least it would be difficult to. So yeah, around New Year's of that year, I ended up stopping working, and a lot had been clicking for me, and I was also still smoking like, a decent bit of weed, not like high at work or anything, but I was into it for sure. I was doing all of that, and yeah, basically just went into like the first like real, I guess like depression of my life, but also it was a very eye-opening time. I was realizing that like my parents weren't perfect, the system that I lived in wasn't perfect, and just that not everyone around me had it figured out and had it dialed, because I was now one of the adults, and I definitely did not have it figured out and did not have it dialed, and like I didn't look any different than anyone else. So I was like, it was just something that everyone goes through. And I think a lot of people, especially like in our culture, they just go to college straight out of high school, and then very slowly that fabric over society, it like slowly erodes away, and they slowly start to understand like kind of what's going on. For me, it felt more like, bam, I just had it like hit all at once, that like all the things I just mentioned. So yeah, I was kind of just like, wow, what am I going to do? I don't know. Like I had watched the movie Into the Wild. I was super into that. Basically, I wanted to like go into the wild naked and just see if I could survive. Parents talked me out of that because I would have fucking died for sure. I was not an Eagle Scout or anything. Couldn't start a fire. I would have been toast without a doubt. Yeah, and then I hit up Quinn Silvernail on Instagram. I knew him not super well, but from Jib and stuff, he'd come by every now and again. And I would basically like said like, yo, I'm at this confusing point in my life. I don't really know like what's up. I don't really know what I want to do. Is there any way I could like come work at like just work to ride at Valdosta, because I had that money saved? And he was like, what are you confused about? And I said some things, and he's like, oh fuck, like a lot, I guess. And it was like yeah, and then was like, okay, yeah, cool, come on down. I came on down. I don't think Quinn told anyone. I showed up, Luke was at the desk. I'm like, yeah, Quinn said I could like work to ride. And Luke's like, oh, okay, just set your tent up over there, I guess. If you want to buy an extension cord, you can do that and get some power. So yeah, I rolled up. I drove down there by myself. Conrad McIntosh was there at the time. He was like 17. Like we were tent neighbors. And it was a solid crew when I rolled up. So this was January of 2016 or 17, somewhere in there. Yeah, it would have been January 2017.
Okay.
So, yeah, I roll up there, and for about a month, things were going really well. It was solid. I had, like, in my head, like, I had mentally defeated weed at the time. I just, like, stopped smoking cold turkey and was like, sick, I don't need to smoke weed anymore. Right on. Got there, wasn't smoking weed, and, other people there. It was around. And I was cruising. I was enjoying myself. I was hanging out with all my favorite pro wakeboarders. I I wouldn't say coming out of the depression, but I was definitely healing myself just by like talking to other people and like being able to wakeboard every day. And it felt like a good place to be and a good thing to be doing. Pratt was coming by a decent bit at the time. Quinn was there. Wes was there. Cody Hess was there. Wes Huber. Luke Tilt. Calvin. Don't remember his last name.
Calvin
yeah,
Hobbs' Instagram. I don't know his last name. I
If
remember his
you
last
know,
name
you
either.
know. The kid, he rips
Yeah.
for sure, and just like super good human all around. And there are a lot of those. There are a lot of good humans just hanging around the park. Trey was there. Trey Senef, the wake skater who runs Blackwater. That's how I made my connection with him. So we would just all hang out every day, and it was a super good vibe. Basically, everyone left for Argentina. Like, literally everyone. It was just like me, Conrad, Cody, and Luke left. Like, that was it. They all went to Argentina to film for the Coalition, the sequel, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wait.
I think so.
Yeah.
Argentina was the second one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is Conrad doing work to ride there too? Or is it?
No, he was
just riding.
He just like bought a winter pass.
Okay.
It was like $400 or $500 or something at the
Cool.
time. And so we were just hanging out. And basically, everyone left. I started smoking weed again because, big shocker, I had not defeated it. Once it got like lonely and boring there, I was back on the herb. And so I kind of fell back into that same place I was right before I got there, where I didn't know what was going on. And I was kind of, without getting into too much detail, I was kind of starting to cause some drama there. I wasn't in a good spot mentally, and I like started to drag some of that drama into the park, which was unfortunate. But then also there was only like 4 of us there, so I felt obligated to stay there. But after like a solid talk with both Quinn and Luke, and I mean like really solid talk, like they were not stoked to see me leave just because I was like, again, one of like 4 workers, but they just gave me like some really solid life advice and really like saw a kid that was struggling and like helped me out when I needed it. One thing Quinn said, he's like, you know, I don't know like how you're going to do it or what the answer is for you, but like, it sounds like you need to find a way to like get stoked on boarding again. Like, you know, like have some direction and just find that stoke. And then Luke was basically like, yeah, dude, like you should travel, like take that pot of money you have, like travel around, like you're young, you don't have any responsibilities, like do the thing, like bounce around. And with that, I was pretty much off. Maybe a little more dramatic of an exit than I needed, but I ended up leaving. And I was heading west again, just super into the wild. There's like a line in that book and movie where it's like, the road always led west. And I'm like, yep, that sounds sick. Road goes west. So I just started driving west with like whatever I had in my car at Valdosta. So like a few wakeboards, like 1 pullover hoodie, and like a week's worth of clothes basically in my computer. I went like through New Orleans and then visited my brother in Colorado. We were kind of talking for a bit and I'm like, man, what do I want to do? I kind of had both Luke and Quinn's like words of advice like ringing in my head. And I'm like, man, I want to get stoked on boarding. I want to continue to like travel and see new places. And I remember when I was at Jib, this crew from Velocity showed up. I wasn't there at the time, but my friend Tim's like told me all about it afterwards. And they were all talking about like Boreal Mountain. I didn't know how to say it at the time. I was probably calling it Boreal or something. But yeah, so I Googled Boreal and I knew they had a real cheap season pass. And obviously, like I grew up in the era of Fuel TV, so I watched like the Woodward show and stuff growing up. So I always thought Woodward was sick. And I was like, dude, $300 season pass, an extra $100 for Woodward sounds sick. So I ended up cruising to California with no plan. I was just sleeping in my car along the way. And February of 2017, that sounds about right. I showed up in California with like no plan and just still whatever few $1,000s in the savings account, probably a few corny Instagram posts later. And I was there in California, like didn't know shit about driving in the snow. I had no idea. It was a super gnarly snow year. I didn't know anything about that. Didn't have any connections, anywhere to stay. I had some family in the Bay, but I wasn't real close to them. I'd never like hit them up or anything. And yeah, I was just like journaling every day, trying to like heal myself, or, you know, just figure out life. And I would write in there like, all right, you got to find a place to live. You have to introduce yourself to like at least 12 people a day. So I would do that, just random people in Starbucks or the parking lot of Boreal or wherever. I'd introduce myself. I'd tell them my situation, be like, I'm looking for a place to live because Tahoe is not an easy spot to find a place to live in February. It's just that doesn't really happen. And eventually I talked to someone who worked at Boreal, and they're like, oh, well, if you work here, they have employee housing. And I was like, oh, no way. So I went up to the cashier and was like, where is the HR department? I think I'm going to like apply for a job. Dude just kind of looked me up and down, and he was like, I'll hire you. Start in the kitchen tomorrow. And I had a place to stay, and I spent the rest of the season there. And I'd snowboarded a few times before, but I definitely never hit a rail. I couldn't ride switch. I basically learned how to snowboard and just lived there in like this shitty hotel that was their employee housing, and it was amazing. And I did that for the remainder of the winter.
Damn. Okay. So you're at Boreal. And that's basically your first kind of experience like into the snowboard culture. How would you kind of describe, because you were pretty immersed in it when you were there. I mean, I think you were eating it all up. You were, probably watching tons of videos and hanging out with people who were actually, in the core of the scene of the sport. How would you kind of, I don't know how you'd say this, but, compare the two cultures of wakeboarding, which you just kind of came off of your whole, past several years of your life now, into snowboarding?
Yeah, to me, it was never really polarized like that, where there was like a wakeboard scene and a snowboard scene. There was more just like different groups of people. And the people that I found and gravitated towards when I got to Boreal, it was very similar to my Gyptopia experience, which I loved. And I was basically trying to recreate it.
Yeah.
And really, maybe I'm still doing it. I'm just still trying to recreate that summer. But that was definitely what I was doing for a while. And I feel like I did a pretty damn good job that winter. I'd work in the kitchen. I was out in California. Like, weed was really chill. I was just like loving that. I would like party a bit just with everyone around. Yeah, and the overall vibe was just super good. I was around a lot of like-minded people, which long term is not the best thing, because just nobody knows what the fuck they're doing. They're all just living day by day. But at 18, it was just like a beautiful place for me to like learn and grow as a human. Just experiment, figure out more about myself, and really do exactly what I wanted to do, which was be outside in nature, riding a board with friends, making new connections, and just, yeah, we're like there was an area of the PCT right across the highway you could go and like do some like backcountry stuff, just like a boot pack trail. The park at Boreal was really good. It was fun I was getting into skateboarding for the first time ever really in my life, learning how to like pump around transition and stuff, which is not easy at 18. I mean, learning anything new past 16, like, it's tough.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was figuring all that out, but really to compare the two scenes, it felt extremely similar to my Jib experience. Everyone was there just living in the moment, trying to figure out how to have the most enjoyable day that day. And it seemed like happiness was a real priority. And obviously, like, now that I've had some time to like reflect on that era of my life, living like for the moment with happiness is like, and self-gratification, I guess, is like your number one priority, isn't necessarily that doesn't align with my values like long term moving forward. But just the emphasis like on being happy is something that I felt like I hadn't really got in my life except for at Jib and there. And again, a lot of the people I was around, I don't think were going about it in very like sustainable, or it was more of like a selfish way of doing it, I guess. But it was cool, and I really gravitated just toward that, toward just trying to be happy, just trying to like enjoy life, enjoying like each day that we get to spend on this planet, and just being very thankful on a very regular basis. We were all like looking around, because you don't just show up and work at a ski resort if everything's going great. A lot of people are running from something or running towards something, like this idea, and I was definitely doing that too. And we were like achieving it. We were doing it. It felt like I was a fucking like hippie in the 70s cruising around to Dead shows, and just I didn't have a care in the world. Yeah, and that's kind of what was like going through my head on a daily basis. And it was a really enjoyable time. And obviously I was like snowboarding every day. I was getting good at it quick. And and like Videograss came and did a premiere, and like all their riders came, and I was like into Videograss movies. There were like a couple of Gyptopia. That's how I kind of got into snowboard, like street movies and Videograss. And then just like getting to meet those dudes and being around like pro snowboarders on a regular basis, just like in the park at Boreal, it was a super cool experience for me, and it was all new, and yeah.
Sick. Was Tommy Gesme there for that premiere?
Oh,
Was that Video Gracias? 2016, 2017? Or is that Pat? Is that too late?
no, it was Mayday.
It was Mayday. Okay.
I do not think Tommy Gesme was there, but he was there on a regular basis because I distinctly remember his switch nose press on a light tower DFD. Like, that was just so money, and I remember his keep the change sticker on his binding, and man,
he's just good,
style,
dude.
dude.
He's so good.
I'll never forget that. Yeah, and I had some friends who knew what were good or knew what was good at the time, and I didn't. I'm like, damn, that dude's good, and they were kind of like, yep, because I would say that about some other people, and they'd be like, but
Are you sure about that?
yeah, when I said it about him, they're like, oh yeah, he's fucking solid, and like gave me some background, and then it clicked because I was like into Videograss, and I was like, holy shit, that's that guy, like that's dope,
Yeah.
and he was cool too. Like him. Shoot, am I really going to forget his last name? Keenan Crawley. He's just like, he hasn't really blown up in snowboarding, but I think like the core of snowboarding, especially in Tahoe, everyone knows like who he is. He does like really rad poetry. He's just like a very artistic, kind human being out there. Right away, even when I was working in the kitchen, I'd ride the chairlift up with him and I'd just make conversation with everyone on the chairlift. He was super cool. He like remembered my name right away, and there was a few other people like that. There were definitely cool guy vibes, but there were a few people who were just like really down, and I was there on my snowboard in the park every day, and even though I wasn't that good and I was just like the annoying stone kid who worked in the kitchen, like people were like nice to me and hyped that I was out there like every day and just like throwing me good positive energy.
Sick.
And yeah, and like I definitely got some chairlift rides with Gesme, and like that was sick. Like good.
That's
real
real sick.
Good stuff.
That's real sick.
Yeah.
So I don't know how much more you want to talk about your time out west, because I kind of have a gap, I feel like, in your life here that I was kind of trying to track down and follow. Your next move that I remember is kind of coming back to West Rock. I don't remember if that was immediately after.
So there was like a whole year in between that.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah, I cruised home. My dad, right before I left for Valdosta, got diagnosed with some like a cancerous tumor. I don't really know that much about it. Definitely, anyone who's had cancer is probably like, this dude doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. You're right, I don't. I basically left right when all the shit happened. He went through like a few rounds of radiation, no chemo, or maybe they're the same thing. I don't know. But yeah, and then his surgery date was for like basically when the snowboard season was over, probably like mid-May or something. So I cruised home. I got there like the day of his surgery. I was there for his surgery. It went well. And then I hung out at home for like another 2 months after that, got a job slinging pizzas, went kind of back into depression after like this amazing time that I just had like around like-minded individuals, making money, just surrounded by a lot of positivity, whether it was like naive and short-sighted or not. It was very positive and optimistic energy. And then working at a Domino's in the hood suburbs of Raleigh or like the inner city, there was not a lot of that positive energy. So that was a bummer. And I'd made that connection with Trey Senef at Valdosta, and I hit him up and was like, yo, like, you looking for any workers at your cable park? Kind of, again, just trying to recreate that summer jib. And I had some other friends like Stockton Woodard and my other buddy Dan. They cruised up there and were posting Instagram stories. And I'm like, damn, that place looks sick. So he was like, yeah, man, come on out. I got a room for you in my camper. So I came out, posted up in his camper, and we would just session that cable like every day. And I basically did that for like the remainder of that summer. Just hanging out at Blackwater. I was probably wake skating, wakeboarding like 50-50. Me and Trey would just get up. There'd probably be we'd have like maybe 5 customers a week or something, and 3 of them would be like the homies. And we would just ride and build rails the rest of the time. And he would like pay for my groceries, gave me a place to stay. It was like on his parents' farm, so they would just be basically like foster mom and dad for the summer, and they'd like cook me dinner a bunch, and maybe I'd help like put up a fence or move some stuff around for the wedding venue there. But yeah, that was pretty much the whole summer. I'd hang out with Trey and like some of his buddies from high school and stuff, but it was basically more just wakeboard, wake skate every single day, talk to Trey. Trey was a real like creative person who, if you know him, just like, again, positive energy for days, very optimistic, very in the moment for sure, which, yeah, I've always been attracted to that. And even as I get older, I'm still very attracted to it. I'm just more into the idea of like, how do I sustain this? How do I keep this rolling for you know, ideally like a long life ahead.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was super good to like be around him, and he taught me a lot, you know, just like about the cable, about rails, about like the wake skate scene in general, especially wake skate tricks. I got pretty decent in wake skating that year. And some people have their thing. I like to wakeboard, draw a little bit, or really I learned how to be a creative person that year. I was kind of into drawing before, and I like to do board sports. But he's just creative everywhere in the way he builds a feature, paints something, just like looks at the world. It's a very like on the flow, just like take it one step at a time, and that's going to dictate like how you do the next thing.
Yeah.
So I kind of like picked up on that attitude quite a bit, and just was like okay to make like shitty art, whether it was like painting something or like sculpting some concrete or whittling wood or whatever it was, or like making a poster, doing an event, you know, just whatever. So I stayed there the rest of that year, and yeah, it was super good. Lots of riding. And then I cruised back to California, back to Boreal for the spring. I started in the kitchen there. I tried to get on Park Crew. Mark Rugolo was pretty good homies with Lane Knack. He spent some time out in Tahoe back in the day. And Lane Knack was the like super sick OG snowboarder. If you know, you know, Grenade Days and all that whatnot. But he was running the parks at Boreal for a long time. So I kind of had an in there, but like not really. And I was trying to get on Park Crew. Didn't work out, so I was in the kitchen, and I was basically just, like, talking to Lane every day when he was, like, getting food for breakfast. I'm like, yeah, man, like, making him an extra fat burrito. And being like, what's up with Park Crew? Like, and I was not the only person trying to get on Park Crew at the time.
Yeah.
Or that's a continual thing at every mountain. Everyone's like, how you get on Park Crew? What's up with that? So, yeah, and eventually it just kind of worked out. Like, I actually got on Lane's, like, last day, and, yeah, so I moved from the kitchen to Park Crew, and that was a big change because then I wasn't around, like, just riding the lift with snowboarders. I was, like, my coworkers were Jack Reed, who, if you're from North Carolina, like, you definitely know him, Paul Blart, Mall Cop. He runs, like, he's a big dude at Hood, big part of the NC scene, and Vermont, too. He, like, did Park Crew at Loon for a little while. He's got roots everywhere. Very well respected by like the NC scene and snowboarding in general. But yeah, him, Casey Savage, Jesse Gomez, Matt Mello, like just people from all over, people from Vermont, the Midwest, who like were really into snowboarding and really into riding rails and doing street stuff. And yeah, that's who I was hanging out with every day. And at Boreal, I mean, you work like I think 9 or 10 hour shifts, and like we're snowboarding for 5 or 6 of those, and like your boss like wants you to do that. He wants you snowboarding. You want that park presence, we'd call it. We'd all be chilling in the shop, be like, hey, let's get that park presence going, boys. Yeah, just lapping the park with a radio in your pocket and hitting rails. Like, you know, you're supposed to keep it mellow, but not really.
Yeah.
And yeah, we just like Jack would film, and we would just snowboard like every day and just ride the setups that we wanted to build. And it was really cool. And it was rad, too, after working at all these different wake parks that really didn't change the setup that much. And then being able to go to Boreal, where we're changing the setup a couple times a week, or, yeah, once, twice a week, like a rail's getting moved around, full reset every few weeks. So that was super cool. And just being around those super core snowboarders were like, yep, this is sick. Maybe the energy got a little less positive and optimistic and a little more cool guy vibes, but I was down with it at the time. I was rolling with the punches, and it was cool. I was in. I wasn't, you know, it's pretty easy to not hate on cool guy vibes when you're one of the cool guys.
Yeah. That's part of being in the cool guy club.
Yeah.
You're cool guy and people, big time and everyone. So you kind of finish up that winter.
Yeah, and I had some conversations with Dan. I mean, you know Dan. He's talking to
he
everyone.
He has conversations with everybody.
Yeah, I went to West Rock during, they had like a Steez Space Mob thing. It was probably pre-Space Mob. It was just like a Steez day with Quinn and Wes there. Quint, and Wes.
Yeah.
At West Rock when it was just the 2.0s, and I was working at Action. And I cruised out there, so I had met Dan. He was like hyped on my riding and just me as an individual. Or, you know, we kept in contact. He would ask me my opinion on things, and that first summer at Boreal, or first winter doing Park Crew at Boreal, I got to do some really cool events. Like with Snowboy, we did It's Tits, which is like an event that works with boarding for breast cancer, like an all women event to raise money for like breast cancer stuff. And and that was really cool. We also did butterball, just these two really cool events that are for the core of the sport. And they were just really rad and enjoyable events. And I would call Dan and have conversations and be like, man, we need to bring this into wakeboarding. He's Dan, so he's like, hey, yeah, of course, this, that. And just like, we go at 1,000,000 miles an hour on stuff that's probably never going to happen.
Way down the rabbit hole, yeah.
Yeah, but we'd hit that rabbit hole a few times. And I knew Dan, and I hit him up with like a long like resume about like, I'm trying to work here, but like, he didn't really know a lot about me. He knew I like smoked some weed and like got fucked around at Boreal and like kind of technically got fired from Action and Hexagon, and I wasn't really welcome at gym. My track record was not looking very good at the time.
I remember him calling me, and I don't know what he said exactly, but he was like, "So Dylan, I heard he kind of smokes some weed, and like I don't know all that much about him. Like, do you think think about having him here at West Rock?" And I was like, yeah, dude, it'll be great. Like, yeah, he smokes a little bit of weed, but like, he's not gonna do it at the park. Like, it'll be fine. Like, he's not gonna show up to work high, I don't think. So yeah, like, I think he's a good fit. But yeah, it was funny that like everyone talks to Dan, and like you were talking to Dan, but you don't really know each other that well, and like you're still at Boreal, snowboarding and stuff. But anyways, didn't mean to interrupt there, but
no, totally. Yeah, so I was trying to get in with Dan. That wasn't really happening. And then I like went back to Blackwater. And then you told me, you're like, yo, and he would like hit some excuses like, oh, we're pretty staffed up. I got a bunch of people asking, and there's really like nowhere for housing, blah, blah, blah. So I went back to Blackwater. The vibe was quite a bit different. Trey started dating Erica at the time, and it's just like, it's totally different. Just like two homies like living in a camper, just like hanging out, building rails. And then like versus when Trey like had a like serious girlfriend there. He was like trying to do stuff with her, taking life a little more seriously, and I was just kind of there twiddling my thumbs a lot of the time. So like nobody's fault, but just the vibes. Kind
of third wheel vibes,
Yeah, the vibes were just not as sick for me that year. I like had to get a part-time job to like help out. Like the groceries weren't really flowing like they were the year before. Yeah, and then you told me you were working in West Rock, so I hit up Dan again. I guess that phone call happened, and then he's like, yeah, and I think I got a place for you to live, too. And I was like, cool. And, yeah, that's pretty much all I remember, and then cruised up to West Rock.
Yeah, I mean, we were there around the same time. I don't know who got there first, but it was pretty damn close.
Got there like August. I guess that would be like of summer 2018 or 19?
18, yeah. And then we lived at the same place there in Rockford. I don't know where it was. I couldn't tell you. But so we're there. I don't even remember specifically how like the idea of filming a movie started. If you do, I'd love to hear, because for some reason I don't remember.
I don't think it started that year.
Okay.
I mean, there was probably talk.
Yeah.
Everyone's like, I'm trying to film this movie. I mean, if you ride boards, like you've definitely talked about a big edit with all your homies. You're all going to save footage, and you're all going to hit 6 street spots and do cab nines and do spillways, and it's going to be sick. But yeah, so my kind of thing, I guess, segueing into the movie, we lived at West Rock that summer. It was very fun. Dan gave us the opportunity to put on an event that we called Rockford Rip Fest.
Yeah. I want to touch on like our experience at Rockford. I wasn't sure when we started talking about the movie.
Yeah,
but I'm sure we were talking about it then, but it wasn't anything concrete or real. But yeah, let's kind of talk about our time at West Rock in that summer of 18 fall, as well.
Yeah, I mean, it was super fun. I remember getting there and being like, what's up? Like, what are the vibes? Like, any local rippers? And you're like, there's this one kid there who sure likes to do air tricks. He's pretty cool. Matt Gagnon. Yeah, and that's how I'd still describe him. Like, likes to do air tricks. I guess he's pretty cool.
100%. I have him still in my phone as Matt Air Trick West Rock, and I'm never going to change that. That's who he is for sure.
Yep. But that was good. That park was super sick. There was and still is so much fucking plastic there. Tons of unit rails. Very fun. Just tranny and flow for days. Super
easy to move shit around. Like, you can move it around super fast.
It's like chest deep for anyone who doesn't know, and you can just pick up the anchors and walk them where they need to go.
I don't know, 1.5 feet of mud or 2 feet of mud or whatever, and you just pick up the mud buckets and put them down and stomp on them, and you're pretty much good to go until it
So that was cool. I mean, I think we had some input over the setup for sure, and would move some stuff around. I'd just gotten my HVX at the time, so me and you were filming quite a bit, or at least a little bit, just at the park doing that. I had my winch that like would break every other time you used it, and we would talk about winching and just like winch some picnic tables that would break, and then we wouldn't fix it. yeah, that's kind of how that was going. The event was super fun that we ran. It was definitely inspired by some snowboard events that were really cool and we both really enjoyed.
Yeah, this is Rockford Rip Fest. I don't know when we did it. It was in the fall. I think it was really fucking cold when we did it. So it was probably October. I think it was October, early October, and it was raining.
Yeah, we got a decent turnout too, like 15, 20 people or something.
We did.
Yeah.
Definitely did. And then
yeah, I mean that's what that summer was. It was a lot of more wakeboarding, good stuff, you know, solid between me and you. It wasn't really there was good boarding for sure, but it was not like Gyptopia or Boreal where I was surrounded by like a huge crew of people who were like-minded, on the same vibe, just very positive. Not to say everyone in West Rock was like negative or anything. There just weren't a lot of people. There definitely weren't that many people talking about boarding. It was pretty much like me and you having some beers at nights, watching Videograss movies, which was sick, but much different than when it's like everywhere you look.
Like the scene is super young. You know, snowboarding's been around forever, and you know some wake parks have been around for a while, but a new wake park in a small town in Illinois, there isn't a board scene, per se. Definitely there wasn't really when we were there at that time. But so I know we filmed a little bit. Maybe that's when that edit was made. Was that the HVX volumes? All three of those were made in that fall. Okay, so you made those. And then where do you go after that summer in Rockford?
Yeah, so I did my final season at, wow, I sound way better with just one headphone.
Yeah, it's the way to go.
Yeah. So I did my final season at Boreal. I did a whole year of park crew there. After that, yep, that checks out. I probably went home for like a week or two to North Carolina and then cruised back over to California. Yeah, because I got my Subi and just drove out to California that year, kind of hit some parks on the way, like just scenic national parks and stuff. Spent the whole winter there. It was probably my best winter, like boarding wise, because I started to like figure out everything, but I fell kind of deep into the cool guy vibes. The park crew wasn't like as good of a trip. We like lost Lane Knack. So he was team captain. He was like the coach. We lost him. We were a little lost for a little bit there. And, yeah, I just kind of fell into like a bit of a negative trip. I had this super sick job where I was getting paid to snowboard like all the time, and I just like was not enjoying it. I was like pretty depressed. I didn't really like to snowboard. It snowed so fucking much that year. It was, I guess, the winter of 2018 or 18-19. Yeah, that sounds right. And I know to anyone who like hasn't spent an entire season at a ski resort, it's like, oh, you're living. What do you mean? You're like at a ski resort and it's snowing all the time, like fresh powder. All right, Boreal is not the place for powder. I'm out in Tahoe and this unit's got like 400 feet of vert. Like it is not the spot. And I work park crew. So like when it snows a bunch, instead of like having this super sick job where you just like lap the park in sunshine and hang out and then rake twice a day, you are digging out rails, like stopping them from being buried for 8 hours. We just have sticks of bamboo and we just be poking around looking for these rails so the cats don't like run them over. Yeah. And like you got to do that in the park and then you have to do that in the rail like graveyard too. So I would just do that and it was not sick, especially when there's ads all over Craigslist to dig out people's houses for like $50 an hour. And I'm making like 14 digging out rails doing the exact same thing.
Yeah.
But I ended up like doing snow removal a little bit, so just like driving around a loader, and that was a good time. That was fun. Yeah, just to learn a new skill, and yeah, so that was cool, and that's kind of how that winter went. My living situation was really sick that year. I was living in Tahoe Donner in like this really nice house, but basically everything should have been going super duper well, but I was getting a little older. I was like 20 or 21 at the time. I guess 20. Yeah, and I was just kind of in that depression. I wasn't like making being happy every day like a priority. It was like all these other things, these external things, like having this like cool job or like making money or doing this or like living somewhere else, because like living in a hotel room with like whatever 3-4 other dudes was super sick when I was like 18, 19, first 2 years there. But then it's like, I've been here 3 years, I should be living somewhere else. So I was living somewhere else. I was really only hanging out with like my few coworkers who like some of them had their own stuff going on, and it yeah, I kind of fell into a negative space for sure. And that's kind of how that season ended. I just went out there and did that and was yeah, like doing park crews, still snowboarding a bunch. And there were definitely good times. Like, they were very fun, cool times. And that season ended, and I ended up doing like a really cool road trip with the Woodward crew. I went up to Mount Hood, got a spring pass for like a week or two, went and camped with Jack and his girlfriend at the time, then also met up with some like old friends of mine from Michigan, like Brent Beam and Grace Warner. That was super sick to like reconnect with them, spend some time, and then I linked back up with the Woodward crew, and we did a little like skate road trip where we'd like, it was like a big crew from Tahoe. There was like 30 of us. Like, when we'd roll up to a skate park, like, it was horrible. Like, all the locals would be like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, 30 of us. Like, a van with 12 people plus like 5 more cars. Maybe even more than that. But yeah, we'd like hit a skate park every day, maybe some street spots or like a DIY, and then we'd have like cool, like scenic campgrounds planned out at night. So that was beautiful.
Dang.
We went all the way through Oregon and went all the way through like Washington, through like Portland, and then Seattle, and then up through Bellingham, and like took a ferry out to Orcas Island, spent the night out there, and that was amazing, just exploring the Midwest. I had my winch on top of my car because I was ready to drive straight to West Rock from there. I hit that winch spot at the Oregon Ducks football stadium. Yeah, with the whole like Woodward skate crew. They were like super down. Everyone like stopped for like a couple hours and drove the winch for me. There was like 15 of us there. It was sick, dude. That was a good time. That was like probably first or second legit winch spot I'd hit.
You were hauling ass,
I was
dude.
moving, dude. Yeah. Commit.
See if I can put. You still got that clip somewhere?
Somewhere.
All
It's
right,
on the
I'll
gram,
see.
so maybe like a low res.
Yeah, let's see if I can put that in here because you're mobbing through that thing.
Yeah.
I know a couple other people hit that. I think Tyler Hyam maybe hit
Yeah,
it.
he's got a
his
nice
real
hit
wake
on
part
that for sure.
Yeah. So you're cruising. It's like a road trip kind of to end
Yeah.
your West Coast.
Yep.
Maybe you didn't know it at the time, but like it was kind of the end of your West Coast experience.
It was, yeah. So after that, I cruised straight to West Rock, and you weren't working out there that next summer. I definitely tried to convince you to, but you were not down. You were like, oh, I'm going to be in action. And I was kind of like, all right, sick. We'll just have the whole Midwest locked down because I had my winch on top of my car. I'm like, we're going to winch in Rockford and then winch in Grand Rapids and winch everywhere in between. Smooth.
Yeah, I spilled all over myself. Well, that beer's done. All right, keep going.
But, yeah, so that was kind of the plan, just to cruise back. Matt was still working in the park, and there were some other people that I was hyped to work with, and I just wanted to wakeboard more, and I could do that at West Rock. I guess I kept the weed smoking to at least Dan's standard, and I got offered a job the next year again.
How many doobies a day do you think Dan's standard is?
I don't know. I think it depends on how low key you are,
That's
and
true.
how it depends on who you are too.
Oh,
Definitely. If you're like top pro, like you can just smoke right behind the hangout container and it's good to
yeah.
go.
Don't do that, though.
Don't do that.
Don't do that.
Don't do that. Whack move.
Definitely don't do that.
But
Okay, so this is when ZMT in the movie,
yeah,
first movie tape.
Yeah. So I remember being out in California that last year, and just Each Meter Triangle was kind of like a meme page at the time, and being like, damn, what a sick name, which is like very interesting because like a year or two later, I'm like, fuck, we got to change the name. Nobody knows what the fuck it means. But I was very hyped on the name at the time and wanted to do something, and was like, damn, ZMT is so sick, such a sick name. We get there, we start talking about a movie, and yeah, you're talking about like, oh, want to just roll with the ZMT name? And I'm like, yes, sounds great. We were probably only calling it Each Meter Triangle at the time.
For sure, using all those syllables.
Yeah.
Just brutal.
But yeah, so I remember like writing down in my notebook, like, all right, I want to have at least 18 winch spots. Like, it should be at least 12 minutes long. We should have so many spots at night, and I want to film it all on mini DV tapes. I was watching a lot of skate videos at the time, a lot of snowboard videos, and just the VX1000 was still a very viable camera. I had an HVX at the time, which isn't like generally used to film on tape, but it can. And to a wakeboarder, it looks exactly like a VX1000.
Yeah.
Same thing. It's filmed on tape. It looks exactly like a dad cam. They don't fucking know. Yeah, and you had one as well. So we're like, cool, let's film an entire, right there, that
There
unit.
she is.
Yep, we're like, let's film a whole movie on, or, a movie. We were hoping for like 10 minutes on mini DV tapes. That was kind of the idea, and have it like mostly be winch stuff. And yeah, we were super hyped, and we actually started like winching some that year, and we got a crew together. Matt was kind of just like an obvious one. He was around and down to send. You hit up Hannah, who was riding at at Action at the time, and asked her, and she was down. And yeah, we kind of just started going and finding some spots and doing the thing.
Yeah, and it wasn't that like anyone was invited or disinvited in the movie. It was if you were down to wakeboard and like put in any sort of commitment, you'd get a clip, you know, like there was no invite or there was no like non-invite. Like it was anybody who was willing to actually put work into it.
Us four just happened to be around enough to make like full parts happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, and exactly. Anyone who was down to like come put in some work. Like if you were there driving the winch and wanted to pull at the spot and we weren't kicked out, you were getting one without a doubt that year.
100%.
Yep. Because like what we were doing wasn't that much cooler. Like we were all learning how to winch, how to hit the streets, using just horrible machines.
Very, very bad machines. Surprisingly, the action winch was even worse than the one you had.
But it ran.
But it ran consistently. That's all it had going for it. But it did do that, and it was heavy as fuck. So you said it kind of started as like a 10-minute thing. When do you think in its progression it moved into like, okay, we're gonna do four full parts, have a friend section, like this is gonna be like a full length movie?
Pretty much when we finished filming, and it was like, damn, we got a lot of footage.
Yeah,
I think it's gonna be like 18 minutes. I haven't watched that in a long time. I don't remember how long it is. Probably like right at 20.
24 minutes, I think.
Oh shoot.
Yeah.
I remember making a teaser for it, and it was like 3 minutes, and I'm like, wow, we showed like there was like almost no B-roll, and we showed maybe like a tenth of the clips. Like, damn.
Yeah.
Okay, we have some footage here. Yeah, a lot of it was horrible. I forgot what was going on, but it was just some of it was looking so bad.
There were some very sus clips in that.
Yeah, just filming wise, camera setting wise, editing wise.
I mean, I didn't know what I was doing. I had no idea what I was doing when it came to filming or winching, both of which I could wakeboard on some unit rails. I mean, besides that, it was a total learning experience. And like you had some experience filming for sure and like winching as well, but it was definitely a learning experience all around.
No doubt. Yeah. Oh, I guess something I want to touch on. I forgot when this was. It was sometime when I was living in Raleigh, maybe when I was slinging pizzas. But I went. I'm trying to think of what happened. I went down to Valdosta. I ran into Dylan Miller, and then I came up to North Carolina, and they had this like slingshot demo at Southtown. I ran into Dylan Miller again, and then I came up to West Rock for a trip and ran into Dylan Miller, and he was filming for his X Games part at the time, and I'm like, dude, we keep running into each other, and this was, again, just me kind of like building that base. And he's like, yeah, we're going to cruise back through, we're just going to drive back from here and like hit a bunch of winch spots for my X Games part, and I was like, oh, I got some spots for you. This is when the bird cage.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So I like showed them the bird cage and a few other spots, and they're like, cool, you can't really tell how big it is on photos. And the other spots I had were pretty solid too. He's like, we'll hit you up. You know what? No, I wasn't even living in Raleigh at the time. I just happened to be up there for a concert. He texted me and was like, hey, you think you could show us the spot? Even though I already sent him the pin, which like very cool of him to hit me up and ask me.
Super cool.
They kind of did. They only had 3. So it did help to have another person, but like they totally could have just like grabbed the spots, got the clips, no credit. But he asked me to show him around. I showed him a spot or two, and then we showed up to the bird cage. Him and Trevor Bashir just looking at this bird cage. It's like 11 feet tall. If you fall inside of it, it's like a 20-foot drop to a concrete slab. Like, yeah, you're dead. Or like if you knock yourself out, like there's just water pouring on your face, and like it's gonna take the fire department. Like, God, it's
dead. Death.
Yeah, you're dead. So super heavy spot. And he just rolls up. They both look at it, kind of just like sizing it up for a few minutes. And they're like, yeah, I think I could do it. He's like, I have no idea why it's here. Why would they just keep going up with it? But I'm so glad they did. And I was like, no way they're going to fucking hit this. Are you kidding me? And yeah, Dylan just started sessioning it. And it was like a 3-4 hour battle, just getting smoked into like a foot deep water of like muck. And then like a storm started rolling in. We heard some like gnarly thunder happening. It's like starting to get a little dark. It's like 6 or 7. And we're like, fuck, like we got to do something. So Trevor gets up on my shoulders and is like up in the tree and like gets the beaner clip for the winch like 6 inches higher. Dylan goes one more try, stomps it clean as fuck. That's what's in the part. I got like a solid photo, which I was super hyped on. And yeah, like as he lands pretty much, he cruises in, we all celebrate, and then like bam, super gnarly thunder and just like starts just pouring rain. Like could not have rode, could not have filmed, no way.
Yeah.
We packed up the winch and everything in the pouring rain. And that was definitely a pivotal moment. This was before any of the tape stuff happened, but it was like, damn. It was like winching 101 for me. How to set up a beaner clip, where to put the winch, how to size up a spot, where's the best place to park? How serious should you be? And obviously this is all open for interpretation, but it was like an example of like, this is how some guys filming for an X Games part who have been pro wakeboarders for a while. Cause it was Brenton Priestley, Trevor Bashir, and Dylan Miller.
Squad.
So again, yeah, good squad.
Yeah.
And super cool for me at the time. I was 18 or 19 to get to spend time with those guys. But that was kind of my winching 101 and helped get me like super stoked on the whole, just the whole thing. And then I got clip high from I got a photo that like ran in some mags and I was super hyped on. So, I got photo high, clip high, whatever from that day and was just hyped on winching.
Definitely. That was that front two or switch front two? Cab two. Cab two. Okay. Sick. Very sick clip and also sick photo. So I guess move back into tape. I don't know if there's anything you want to touch on filming wise, any trips we took or any specific clip. I know in P2 I want to talk about some specific clips you had, but if there's anything on tape you want to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, it was just a cool learning experience overall. We hit that like sea ledge spot and we roll up super early in the morning, probably after Rip Fest. And we got to there's this rock that's just like a 10-foot like sheer rock that like somebody like hammered in like a sketchy rope at, and that's the only way to get down there. We like lowered the winch down this rope. We lowered a kicker down this rope in 2 pieces, like a bucket full of tools, put them all together, realized we had no way to secure the kicker. We stacked like a bunch of rocks up just to like make it happen. Every time we hit the kicker would float down the river.
All the rocks would fall away.
We'd have to restack these 2 pile of rocks every try. Winch is like crawling, going so slow. But it was super cool. It was like creative problem solving in a relatively like pointless way. I guess what I'm trying to get at is it just made me realize that I was like around another group of people that were making like happiness a priority. And we were doing this thing that was relatively pointless. It wasn't helping us like future wise or bank account wise. Like, yeah, we were contributing to the wakeboard culture, which was cool, but like that was for us. That was like a soulful endeavor. That wasn't checking any boxes. That wasn't making the parents particularly stoked or proud or anything. That was just doing it because we wanted to do it. And it was like teamwork. We were having to come together, and there was a lot of positive energy, like a lot of laughs around that. And that whole experience, like that's just one example. There were dozens like that. But that's what was like, yep, winching's sick. This crew is sick. I'm stoked on this. I like how hard winching is. This is awesome.
Yeah, it's really fucking hard, but it's a lot of fun. And it's not even the winching part that is fun sometimes. It's like you're in the cut with all your friends and it's just, it all sucks. But the fact that it sucks so much sometimes, it's like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
Like you're in smelly water, it's shallow, you can eat shit and get really, messed up. But that's the fun of it for me at least. I think a lot of people. How would you say the movie was received? Kind of, you were saying it was for the culture. Or that's kind of
everyone was hyped, especially at the time. We had no pressure. We maybe got like 1 or 2 boards to film this movie. Like the majority of what that movie was filmed on, like we paid for those boards. Like maybe we got like a hookup or something, but like, so there was no reason for anyone to hate on it. Really, we were just a group of kids that like nobody knew, or not kids, like whatever. We were in our early 20s, but we were just a crew that nobody really knew. And we put together this like really cool movie, and basically anyone who like snowboarded or skated or fucked with either of those cultures resonated with like the mini DV like side of things. We did some premieres. We did one at the Steve's Factory in North Carolina and another one at some bar in Grand Rapids. And yeah, everyone was hyped. JB posted on his YouTube channel, got quite a few views. All the comments were really positive. And yeah, anyone who saw it was hyped. Definitely the riding isn't like super good, but the vibes were solid. It was obviously we were having a good time making it, filming the whole thing. And yeah, I'd say people were hyped. And again, the bar was like nothing.
The bar was nothing because at that point,
exceeded it.
I don't even know if any movies came out within like a 1.5 year window
like
on either end of that.
2016 and then nothing.
Yeah.
Well, the Coalition.
The Coalition.
Yeah.
And it's pretty much, it was just the Coalition.
Sorry
if there's another movie that came out of
like maybe like Ice Cream or something. There's maybe like some cable stuff.
Sure, yeah, but I mean, there's a difference between like a park movie and then like I don't know. I'm not gonna stand up on my soapbox and tell you that it's way better, but winching's definitely cooler. But yeah, it was received well because the bar was super low because we were all people that no one really knew of. You had the biggest name out of everyone for sure, but besides
Which
that,
is like nothing. I had like 600 followers.
Yeah, you had like connections within. I think you're the most famous, not famous wakeboarder. Like everybody, but you don't have a huge following. But yeah, it was received super well, I think, and it was just really cool to see. Like, it felt like people came out of the woodwork. Like I know Ollie Jerome bought. We sold packages, which was a beanie. We did a print mag, which I kind of want to go into about why you decided, or we all decided, mainly you, to run with a print. There were a bunch of names that came out and bought, stuff, which was super cool. And I know we sent, or at least I sent a package to Shredtown. I don't know where I got their address, and I don't know if they got it, but I did that with a couple of people. And I, never heard anything, but hopefully they liked it.
Yeah. It worked well. The Valdosta dudes were hyped on it for sure. They helped get the word out a little bit. It's cool. Yeah,
definitely. Everyone seemed to be super stoked on it. But I do want to talk about the print and why that was a big thing.
In hindsight, knowing how much work the print is, I don't know why the fuck we did a print.
Because we didn't know how much work it was.
Yeah, I guess that was it right there. Trying to just scramble and finish editing the movie. You did a lot of the print. Didn't you? Yeah, you did a lot of the write-up anyway. I put all the pictures where they go and stuff.
Yeah. Well, and then we also, we can talk about this after, but we made fucking USBs that were tapes.
Yeah.
That was easy, but.
Yeah, so I guess just coming from snowboarding and skating, seeing the Videogross thumb drive that you have up there, that's the mini HVX, that was super cool. I was trying to imitate that a little bit. I don't know why the print thing, because I wasn't particularly into magazines or anything at the time. I think it was just in the middle of transition where web edits were done being a thing. It was kind of moving all to social media, and obviously they're still not completely done, but for the most part, they just didn't really matter.
Yeah.
And I was just very nostalgic of the times when people would have print magazines in their hands and VHS tapes in their hands and put them, even though I wasn't a part of this era, I just for some reason nostalgized it as way better and way more of a community thing. So I wanted to have something that people could hold in their hands and that we could remember. And yeah, I think it was just such an enjoyable experience that wanted to just have something that we could remember when in our old age, 40, 50, whatever, just moving forward. And also wakeboard magazines weren't really a thing, or definitely weren't running any of our photos. And I wanted a book full of street photos. So it was fuck, let's just make one. And that's what the movie was too. That was me and you both. We saw this hole for what we wanted in the sport, and for a year and a half, 2 years, we were talking about it. And it was
we were talking shit too.
Yeah,
we were
talking mad
shit. Yeah,
just judging all the other videos super hard up on our high horse for no reason,
for absolutely no reason.
Yeah, so it was fuck, let's do this thing. Let's
do something about it.
Let's do a video or something.
Yeah, definitely. Before we go into P2, I know it was after tape was all done. You and Matt went over to the Philippines in the winter to kind of continue, roll off the high of filming tape.
Yeah, you were supposed to come.
I was. Shout out me for not.
Yeah, it was originally me, you, and Tristan. Or me, you, Matt, and Tristan.
Tristan was all supposed to go, yeah.
Yeah, and then they bailed, and Matt had was not done with college. I had nothing going on.
I remember the night you guys booked, maybe it was just him that booked his ticket and then you booked afterwards, but he was on some shitty app that was getting him the lowest price. And it was I don't know, it was a 3-day flight basically, because it was he went to Honolulu.
He had a day there.
Yeah, he went to California and then Honolulu, and then he went to Japan. And it was so fucked.
And I flew over New Year's to get a cheap flight.
Okay.
It was New Year's night. I didn't have a New Year's. I flew over the date line, and it was oh, it's January 1st.
Just skipped a day.
Yeah.
It's
I was
crazy.
fuck, that sucks. But yeah, me and Matt decided to go to the Philippines. Obviously, CWC, it always looked like a blast. I didn't really have any commitments other than going back to Park Crew at Boreal. I tried to see if I could maybe hop on after that. Not really. I'm trying to think what I did in between. I maybe got a job somewhere, a short-term job.
Yeah.
I have no idea. Something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then we went to the Philippines. That was super cool. If you've ever been, it's totally a blast. We show up, and Matt just found some guy off the couch surfing app which if you don't know about that app and you travel around, you definitely should. It just like connects people who like travel and want free places to stay. So this like random guy, Jerry, who was super cool, like picked me up from the Manila airport, took me back to his house. It was like full on James Bond status. Like he just like nodded at a doorman and like a wall opened and he drove his car in there. And I stayed like at his parents' house and he's like, yeah, my parents asked, we like met in Europe. It's like kind of weird that we've never met before and you're sleeping here. And I'm like, okay, cool. Yeah, just night one, like couldn't say no to his mom like offering me food. So I ate some like just customary Filipino dish and like I handled it. I kept it down, but it was like, oh boy, we're just getting thrown in the deep end here. All right. I never really traveled internationally and definitely never been to Asia. So yeah, that was super cool to go like do that. Matt showed up a few days later. Of course, like my board bag didn't make it. It came like the next day or something. Yeah, and then me and Matt he went to like Vietnam or something on a vacation, the dude we were staying with. So we got in like a hostel for a night or two in Manila. And then we go ride Republic for one day. And Matt like bought the bus tickets from Manila down to Naga. Cause like, if you don't know, it's like a 12-hour bus ride. And like everyone told us like, oh, just take the flight. It's only like $100, maybe 200 if you have to pay for bags. But we were like, young and like wanted to save $80.
There's no way Matt would do that. Matt would absolutely not.
Yeah.
Even if it was $1, he would not have done it.
Yeah, no way. So so we took the bus. So we go ride Republic that day, and we're like, we took like an Uber there, but you can't take an Uber back to Manila from Republic. It's like a one-way deal.
It's like too far or whatever.
Yeah, I don't know what the fuck was going on. But we like asked the lady, we were like, oh, like what's up with the bus schedule? And there was like kind of a way to get it, but it was like impossible. Like one bus like got there at 7:05 and the next bus left at 7. So it was like kind of no way to happen if everything was on time. And we're like, fuck, we're fucked. Like whatever, we're gonna figure it out, but like we're fucked. And I was just like, well, let's just like ask one of the people who are here like riding at Republic, because Republic's not too far from Manila, like the capital of the Philippines where you fly in. So there's like some local like Filipinos who ride there. And like first dude we asked is like, oh yeah, I live like right next to the bus station. Like I'll drive you guys there, no problem. And just drops us off at the bus station. Me and Matt are waiting there at the bus station, and there's like, we show them our tickets, and they're like, oh yeah, he'll show you like when your bus, or like they don't really speak good English, but they like pointed this like 11-year-old child, and we're like, okay, bus is supposed to pick us up at like 10 p.m. It's like 10:15. We're like looking over at the 11-year-old. He's just like playing with like sticks on the ground with like his other 11-year-old friend, and we're like, we're so fucked. Like we are so fucked. Like our bus totally already came and went, and then just like out of nowhere, without even looking up, the like little 11-year-old is like, this is you. And we jump over like 3 like medians and like end up on this bus somehow after like stopping traffic that was going like both ways on like an 8-lane highway. Like right at this like huge mall. And we just like throw our board bags in, get in, and we start driving, and like 20 minutes in, I'm like, yeah, we're totally not going to the right place. There's no way, dude. There's no way. Like halfway through this 12-hour bus ride, we stop, go to the bathroom somewhere. I'm like, yeah, we're still not going to the right place. Like no phone service. We hadn't figured out the SIM card thing yet, so we couldn't check.
Oh, jeez.
And I knew Chris Hoff from, that's what I did in between going to the Philippines. I helped install Elevated's cable.
Right. Okay.
Yep.
Sure. Do you want to finish up with the Philippines and then talk about
Yeah, there's
Elevated?
not much to talk about there.
Okay.
But yeah, we can get into
I
Elevated
want to talk
after.
about wakeboarding naked, but yeah, after.
Yeah, so cruise to take the bus, and it was just planned for Chris Hoff to pick us up at the bus station. We show up perfectly on time. Chris is waiting there in his truck, and I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe we just did that. Holy shit. We put our board bags and stuff in there. We cruise to the park. Chris kind of tells us about the hostels. He's like, yeah, this one, that one, they're all kind of shitty, but like whatever. Of course, we weren't going to stay at the park because it's like slightly more expensive to do that.
Yep.
And fuck that. We show up, get a room at Pink House, which was not very sick. Tons of ants, like
Ooh.
lots of mosquitoes. Like I don't think the AC worked. Not ideal, but it was like whatever. We were hyped. It was like about the same as our hostel in Manila that we got.
Yeah, and for the people who don't know, in the Philippines, like you can stay at CWC the park. It's expensive. The rooms are honestly
Not
pretty
super expensive. What, like
No,
50
okay,
bucks
yeah,
a
not
night or
expensive,
something?
but expensive compared to like the houses that are.
You're gonna pay like $300 or $400 a month for staying there and the cable pass, versus you could buy like a 3-month cable pass for $100 and stay somewhere for like $80 a month.
Yeah.
So-
And the places that you stay at, the houses have like actually somewhat decent Wi-Fi, and the park has shit Wi-Fi, and the AC kind of sucks. I know this because I stayed there like an idiot because I didn't know anyone there. But the heads up, if you're going to CWC, stay at a hostel like off.
Yeah.
Because you're gonna get a scooter anyways. So like,
Yeah.
you might as well
And
stay there.
Dario's is the spot. Like, hit us up. I'll like link you guys on Facebook. I mean, I think the Philippines is still there. The CWC is still a thing.
Sure. Yeah. Why not?
Seems like, right?
Yeah. I don't
Yeah.
know. I think COVID's probably over enough now. So
Yeah.
I'd imagine.
But,
Anyways, staying there.
Yeah, so we're staying there. I buy my 3-month cable pass. Matt buys 1-day pass for the equivalent of like $4 US. Yeah, we ride. It's cool. Very day one in the Philippines. We like meet up with some people from the Philippines or from the UK, like this homie Arthur, Max Cockney, Madison White. We're just like all talking. We're like, cool, these people are speaking English at the table. Let's sit next to them and kind of like make friends. They're like, yeah, we're going to the hot springs. This is like day one. We're like, cool. We had like a shitty pin from you. They're like, you guys know how to get there? And Matt's like, yeah, like I have the pin from Hunter, but like we didn't really have phone service. Yeah, you didn't even remember sending the pin.
It was a good pin though, right? It worked.
All right.
We'll get into it.
It was the right place, but we're cruising. My scooter's like pretty good. Matt's scooter's pretty shitty. It didn't want to start. Finally, it starts. We're cruising. We get there, and like Matt's scooter like dies as we get there, and he like stops. He turns it off like before we drive down the road to get to the hot springs. And then he's like trying to crank it, and it won't crank, and finally it cranks up. So we're like, fuck, we should just go back to the park because like your scooter's running right now, and like it's our first day here. So we start driving back. Matt runs out of gas, of course. And and then I drive to just some other gas station. Neither of our phones work. Like we just loaded up maps on Wi-Fi and we're like doing the directions that way. So Matt's just like on the side of the road in the Philippines. This is my first day ever there. I just have to like remember how to get back to him. And I'm just like driving, making turns, looking for a gas station. Finally, I find a gas station. I communicate with like the 9-year-old child who's working the gas station that I need gas in a bottle. He brings me like a Mountain Dew bottle, takes a knife out of his pocket, cuts the top off, fills up this Mountain Dew bottle with gas, and I'm off on my scooter first day driving it, just holding this open Mountain Dew bottle with gas. I find Matt, we fill up his scooter, and we get back to the park, and that was our first day in the Philippines.
Holy shit. That's a hell of a first day.
Yeah, but man, it was such a good time there. It was everyone there was like super cool. I got to meet people from all over. Simon, I knew Simon from, he came out and visited me in Boreal. We were just like Instagram friends before that. But so he came, we were friends with all the people from UK, and like you've been there, you just immediately kind of become friends with everyone who wakeboards every day. That's what you do. And it's almost like fake international traveling because like everyone at the park just like speaks English. And
there's really no like nothing bad
you
can
can
really
get like
happen.
a fried
It's
chicken
like,
sandwich like at the park, like no problem. It's like more expensive than just like chicken and rice on the street, but still pretty cheap.
Yeah.
So that was kind of life, just like partying, hanging out, drinking litros. Just like super cheap, shitty beer that you've like bought by the liter, and then wakeboarding every day and just hanging out, and tons of more stories like that of just random sketchy stuff happening and just making tons of friends.
Good times in the Philippines. I don't know anyone that's ever had a bad time in the Philippines.
Maybe Max.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, he had a good time, like, and for sure partied. But yeah, dude, he showed up and got this like gnarly infection, and then he was driving his scooter, and there's just like random cows that they like stake. They just like stake rebar in the ground, and they'll tie like a 200-foot rope around a cow's neck, and that's how they're like, "This is my cow." Like I don't know. What? You know what I'm talking about?
I know what you're
right?
talking about.
Yeah. And the cows can just like walk across the street and shit. So one of them walked across the street and created like a taut clothesline, and Max got fucking clotheslined off his scooter.
Jesus.
And then he had like 2 weeks of like rest, and he fucked up his hand. And and then we were like partying at the club, and he ended up like breaking like a urinal there, and the security was like all on his ass, and he was like 16 at the time. He like, everyone thought he was like maybe gonna go to like Filipino jail, or like I don't know. You do not want to go to jail in the Philippines, and it was sketchy. Some people were not hyped with him, but but then it worked out, and he got some good wakeboarding in. But
Max maybe didn't have a great time.
maybe Max.
Yeah, I guess if you get injured, I wouldn't want to get injured over there super bad. But I've heard stories of people having injuries, and it actually isn't like it isn't bad.
According to Huber, his Wes
that's who I heard
he
it
broke
from.
his collarbone. He said it was really solid.
Yeah.
I talked to the person who was helping take care of him. She did not have the same experience. She said the hospital was super sketchy. Like, wouldn't release him until she like paid the full bill. But it got handled. I guess it did buff.
It did buff. I want to talk. How many times have you wakeboarded naked? Is it just once?
Well, and during tape, so twice.
Twice, right? Twice.
I was
at
just
night.
like super drunk at this night spot, and I'm like, "Yep, gonna do it switch naked. That's what's going down here, like 7 claws deep." And and hit that really nice spot, and did it naked and switch, and sick clip. Yeah. So the other time I wakeboarded naked was installing the cable at Elevated. I guess let's just finish up the Philippines. Before we get to
for
that.
sure.
So Philippines was super sick. I ended up spending like right at 2 months there, which felt like a great time. The last like 2 weeks, I was pretty over it, ready to go home. First flight got canceled because of COVID, and I just rolled my eyes. I was like, oh, whatever, COVID, not going to be a thing, no way. And then
it was a thing.
Yeah, my flight was through China, so I got flight canceled, refund, ended up booking to stay like 3 weeks later, made it home, all good, and then like 2 days later was when it was like, whoop, 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 like, shit's hitting the fan, borders are closing, everyone fly home at once. So I made it home like just in the nick of time. But before the Philippines, I ended up going out to Elevated, which is in North Carolina, like outside Greensboro, maybe like an hour or two south of where Gyptopia was. And Morgan Batchelor, who I knew from Hexagon and Gyptopia, not like super well, but I knew him. He knew of me. Really, Dan helped with that connection and helped me end up like helping install the cable. So I went out there, lived in a camper. Me and Ethan Weaver, who was like 16 at the time, I hadn't really seen him much since like Hexagon days when I was 14 and he was like 10. So that was super cool. We helped install the cable, and cable got up and going in like early December, which like even in North Carolina like is fucking cold, and there was just no features on the cable except for the pool. And I'm like, well, we're here, we're very like closed off, it's not open to the public, nobody can come through the gate, or if the gate was open at the time. But I was like, this is the perfect time to wakeboard naked, like for sure. So my inaugural laps of Elevated after spending like 3 weeks helping install it was I just ripped him naked, and it was sick. And Fritz and Tony were the guys who helped install that cable. It was probably like one of the last ones that Sesutech installed. I think they went to 313 right after that, and that was probably like some of the last ones. They were super cool. But Fritz took a bunch of photos, and those are still up on the gram looking good.
Those are sick.
Yep.
Very sick photos. So we can talk about, you touched on it earlier about how Elevated kind of continued the growth of the North Carolina wakeboard scene. It was probably not in a super great spot before Elevated was there, because Hex was closed. Gyptopia was basically Gyptopia.
Yep.
And it
was really Shark Wake Park. So
okay,
the original Shark Wake Park in Myrtle Beach, it had 1 or 2 years of pretty decent, okay vibes. Some cool staff who were like into wakeboarding. They were open all year, their first year, so that was sick. Show up in December,
totally forgot about that.
3-2 or like a shorty, and you're a little cold, and you're the only one there, guaranteed.
Yeah.
Cables running full speed. That was sick. The next year, probably the year before Elevated opened, they started running it slow all the time. Everyone was bummed. Jake and Ethan didn't really have anywhere to ride. They'd go ride slow cable at Shark and not be hyped. That one's not really my story to tell, but there was definitely like a year lull there.
Yeah.
And then a lot of the guys from Hexagon just like rode boat here and there, or they were like in their 30s at this point, like doing career stuff, being adults, not wakeboarding every day.
Yeah.
Yep. And then Morgan was, and this one's not my story to tell either, but there were a lot of hoops to jump through to get that park up and going. When I was at Gyptopia, 2015, next year, Elevated Wake Park's going to be open. It's going to be ripping. It's going to be sick. Like, Ethan and his stepdad, like Debo, had their camper up there and like since like 2016. It's going to be open next year. Ethan and Debo kept telling me, next year. Yep. But finally, whenever, 2020, Yeah, 2020, like during COVID, of course, it got rolling.
Okay. So yeah, you helped build that. Is that your first time really having, some hands-on experience with building a cable park?
Yeah, any
Okay.
install work for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I definitely learned a lot like about cables and just general cable maintenance. It was cool to hear directly from, if you kind of know about like wakeboarding and installs, Fritz kind of seems to be like, nobody's going to like flare their chest at Fritz. Like kind of what he says goes. He's like been doing it a very long time. He's very knowledgeable. He knows what's good. His helper, Tony, was very like, obviously kind of like the helper, but also really knew what was good. So it was really cool to get to be around and just like hear from them and like, yeah, just hear it straight from the horse's mouth. Like, This is how it's done. This is how you fucking do it. Not that way. Don't listen to these idiots. And they're German, so that's how it was being said. This is shit. This is the right way to do it. This is shit. We heard a lot of that for sure.
Yeah, that's funny that, German people are definitely different in their culture. But when you're even just observing people, the process of building a full size, it's like you're getting shot with a fire hose in the mouth with, information and knowledge. It's like you learn so much. You think you've done maintenance for a couple of years on a full size. You're like, I know this.
Once.
Yeah, I've equalized. I'm fucking good. I've lowered the counter rate or whatever. But yeah, once you really, see and install it, you learn definitely a lot more.
Yep. That was a good experience. I think I earned some points in Fritz's brain too, because for anyone who doesn't know, when you install a new running cable, you have to lower the counterweight. You run the cable through all the other pulleys, and then you raise the counterweight pulley at the end, and it's basically tied on with just like some rope before it gets tensioned. And then once it's tensioned up, that rope is still on there, and there's no walkway on the counterweight cable or tower. So you got to like walk out there and like walk the tightrope. And again, this was like December. I did it. And then you're just up there basically straddling the flywheel or the pulley. And then as you cut it off, the cable like jerks and tensions up, and it's like riding a bull. Like, it's one to buck you off. And I was the one who was down to do that at elevated. So I cut it off, and then I'm like looking down, and like elevated's pretty shallow. It's like usually in the middle of the cable, overhead deep, but like just barely. But I was like, Shelton, Morgan, like, what do you think? You think it's deep enough to jump? And Fritz is like, don't jump. Like, are you kidding? Like, don't jump. And Shelton's like, yeah, I'm pretty sure. And I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty sure too. Because we were just like stabbing around the day before. I'm like, it's at least like 7 feet. Like, if I just like stomp the landing, we'll be good. And I was like, yeah, I'm just going to jump. And Fritz is like, oh God. And just like looks away. And and I jumped, and it was sick. It went well. I only had the knife in my pocket. And then Morgan picked me up on the jet ski, and I just ripped straight to a hot shower. But Fritz is like, that's crazy. Like, I've never seen anyone do that ever. Like, even when it's warm. He's like, and you didn't even know if it was deep enough.
That's
like,
fucked.
fuck, that's fucked. I was hyped. Yeah, I was like, cool. And then, then the next day I rode naked, and I was a crazy guy for sure.
Wow, that's a quite the couple days you had there back to back.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to jump into it now. I do want to talk about, some mental health and everything that you've kind of been going through. I know you've been sober for a while now, so we can either jump into that now and then kind of talk about P2.
I think it's good just to like hit that right now and kind of have it be its own thing.
Yeah,
so
sure.
I've struggled with like substance abuse and addiction and just like smoking a lot of weed and like drinking a lot of beers. There's like a lot of people in their early adolescence do, for sure. For me, it kind of clicked that it was like maybe a little different when I was like going to the Philippines, where it's like if you get caught for weed, you're like kind of going to jail forever. And I was like still looking around for weed and stuff, and like, you can like party and be like at a ski resort where like it's super chill and makes sense to smoke weed every day, but then I like go home and I'm living with my parents just working some whatever job, and I should be like getting my shit together, but instead I'm still just doing that like as much as I have been. And it definitely like got to be a little bit of like a cycle for me, and something that I'm still like trying to figure out and learn about like myself that way. But basically just like get depressed, have these really uncomfortable feelings that I didn't know what to do with, and then escape them. And I used like smoking spliffs and riding boards was like an extremely effective escape mechanism for me. And I wasn't only escaping, I was also like making new friends, traveling the world, making new connections. So it was cool. But Yeah, I had taken like breaks where I like do 3-4 months without smoking weed or drinking or like whatever. Maybe I do one and not the other, or vice versa. But I hadn't really taken it seriously until the end of filming P2. So yeah, like worked at Elevated that whole summer, and toward the end, I was just feeling myself get pretty spacey, and was like, yeah, like I'm gonna like cut this shit out. Some shit went down, and I just kind of like cut it out and started like seeing a therapist and really like actually putting some effort into trying to like break this cycle of just like being depressed, having uncomfortable feelings, and escaping them. So yeah, started seeing a therapist, got stopped smoking weed, stopped drinking, stopped doing all that. Was eating like way better for a little while. Ended up going to the mountains in North Carolina. I worked out there, kind of skipping ahead here, but yeah, and then I broke my leg. I did like 3 months of still being sober and not drinking or smoking weed, but I was definitely depressed. I was eating like shit. My leg was broken. I wasn't around any homies. I was just like in my hometown, not doing anything, just letting my leg heal. And I ended up moving to the Outer Banks. And right when I got back there, I kind of got back into smoking and drinking because it felt like it made sense again. And I ran that for a while. And then at the end of that summer, I was like, shit, that summer was super enjoyable, but I am back like exactly where I was before. Like I'm still in this cycle. Like just 6 months without it, 6 months on isn't really doing anything to help me break free. So yeah, it's been about, I'm not like years in, but about 8 months now, like no drinking, no drugs. And, I'm stoked up on it. I'm taking it seriously. I'm doing some things and taking some steps to hopefully assure that like I continue down this path. And it's not just about staying abstinent from the substances that I was abusing. Cause I mean, I'm still like, I'm back like eating like shit and stuff, but it's about just constantly trying to like recover, heal, and like progress as a human being, and like staying stoked in that mindset, and yeah, and just kind of like checking in with myself, like how I'm feeling, why am I feeling these ways, talking to other people about it, like when things get bad and like stuff starts to feel like not super sick. Yeah, and those feelings get uncomfortable, and like facing them head on. And definitely like a theme that's been in my life the last like year or two is just like leaning into fear. And for a long time, that was like jumping down spillways or like driving to California with no plan or doing things like that. And now it's more living life in this environment, like clean and sober, and facing these demons that I've been avoiding for so long in my life, and like really trying to get to the root of like what's going on, and just understanding like some generational stuff that like I have so much love and respect for my parents. They absolutely did the best they could, but like they're human beings. Like they passed down some trauma, and like understanding like what's mine, what's theirs, where these uncomfortable feelings come from. Yeah, and that's just kind of been like a big theme in my life the last like year or two, and it feels good. It feels good to like feel this progress. This trip that I'm on currently has been amazing. I feel like I'm seeing a lot of like rewards and benefits of things that wouldn't have happened otherwise, whether I was still drinking, smoking, or just not taking, like treating myself right and like being kind to myself and valuing progress. Just a lot of the things that have been going well just wouldn't have been happening. So it's cool to see that, and it's cool to feel that. And yeah, I think as we continue like chronologically, this will kind of play in, but that's kind of like where my head was at and like where it's gone over the last few years. And I'm like really stoked on the future and like where I'm at now. And I definitely still have like bad days where I get depressed, but I now like have a support system of people that I feel like comfortable talking to. I journal every day. I try to meditate. Definitely don't do that every day, but I have things where if it's like, if I'm not feeling good, I can be like, well, have I been journaling? Have I been talking to people? Have I been taking inventory of my feelings? And like pretty much any time that things aren't going well, it's like, oh, well, that's why. Sit down, meditate, write it down. And it's like, oh, well, that's why I'm not feeling good. What are some things I can do to try to address this and go from there? Yeah, and like times have gotten pretty dark. I definitely was like on the phone with my insurance talking about like suicidal thoughts and things like that to try to talk to a therapist. And it was pretty heavy, like for sure. And just through talking to other people that I like, family and people I'd met through board sports, I was able to like reach out and like get some help and kind of get on this vibe that I'm on right now that feels a lot better than that helpless feeling.
Yeah, definitely. You just touched on, trying to find a therapist. I know I was talking to you. I'm not sure when this was. It was a bit ago when you were talking about the difficulty or how difficult it was to find a therapist, whether that was because, I don't know if the demand was so high, we didn't get super into it, but I'd like you to kind of touch on that.
Yeah, this was I had seen a therapist once or twice in Rockford in person, and it was nice. It helped. I remember, like, we had a winch trip planned, and I'm like, dude, I can't go. Like, I've been trying to see a therapist for a long time. I have an appointment. I got to make it. And it was cool. I did, like, 5-6 sessions with this lady, and it helped. I didn't get to know her super well, but I was like, yeah, that felt good. That felt like steps in the right direction. Didn't see one for a while, and then just my personal stuff just happened to line up with when COVID was hitting pretty heavy, and therapists were just very in demand. And yeah, it was extremely difficult to find a therapist. I have really good insurance that like does whatever, like cross accounts with other insurance companies. And it was just super hard to find anyone who was available and like to find professional help. And, yeah, it was super fucking frustrating and annoying because I'm like, God damn it. I read all this stuff on Instagram or whatever, and it's just like, if you need help, like, just reach out. And it's like, well, I've been trying for like a month and a half now. And like, and I was reaching out to friends, but to a certain degree, like, just your friends aren't there to like fix all your problems. They're there to like support you in times of need. And like, I was kind of rotating through like you, Matt, Hannah, a few other people, just like calling on a regular basis and talking to, and it just kind of felt unfair. It felt like I needed like some professional help. I needed some real strategies from people who'd learned about this stuff. And yeah, that's kind of what I needed. And it was super difficult, and I guess another thing I want to touch on through getting like a therapist that I vibe with and like a few other things, and it still hasn't been like super easy. I currently don't have one, but the biggest thing is just like getting back in contact with like a higher power of my understanding, or just like something of a spiritual nature. It's been very obvious to me throughout my life, the people that seem to like handle very like traumatic times and are able to handle them like well in a way that I admire and kind of put a positive spin on it, have some kind of connection to spirituality or power greater than themselves, whether that's just meditation, a very organized religion, or something like that. So for me, it's pretty open, but that's been like a huge part of my journey, and it feels like really good to be growing that connection and that understanding. And that's like a brand new outlook and a brand new thing for me over the last year or so. So that's been cool.
Cool. Yeah, it seems like, I don't know, since I've known you, you've always kind of talked about like dealing with substances and drinking and smoking. And it's like you said, you'd take time off, but it didn't seem like it was sticking. And it definitely seems, at least in an outsider's perspective, like it's sticking in a different way this time. Like you have a different outlook on it. And, the proof's in the pudding right above you there with that $1,000 check. But yeah, exactly. But it seems like it's, it's different this time. Whether that's something that you're kind of experiencing in the moment, or it's just kind of how you're going about it. But either way, it's, a super good thing. And it's really cool to see. And I definitely appreciate you telling that story. And I mean, if there's anything you want to touch on other than what you've already said, I'd love to hear it. But
yeah, I mean, that feels pretty good at this point in my life. I'm just trying to figure it out like day by day. And, but yeah, it feels good to just get back in touch with that spirituality and to start like mending some bridges. This trip has been cool. There's been some relationships that people that like I didn't necessarily treat the right way, or we just had some like unfortunate interactions, and like I owed some amends and some apologies. Excuse me. And it was really good to be able to make those. They seem to be going like very positive so far, and to like have people that I can like in my support circle that I can like bounce ideas off of and make sure I'm not making things worse or just being selfish in my endeavors. But yeah, that's just kind of where I'm at, and hopefully we keep cruising. Hopefully if we have another catch up in 4 years, I can be a lot more solidified in my beliefs, but right now it's just like one day at a time, and we're trying to just figure it out, and this feels really good for the time being.
Hell yeah, that's good. It looks like it looks good, it feels good, it is good. I feel like it's you're in a really good spot.
It's good.
So it is good. Everything's good. We can kind of shift back to the second movie that you filmed, which is called P2. How many people do you think in the world know why it was called P2?
6.
I was going to say over under 10. So we're smashing the under there.
Maybe like 12.
Okay.
But yeah.
Do you want to explain, why it was called P2 before we get into the movie itself?
How hard is it? You got a P2 card in there?
Yeah, I can pop it out real quick. If you want to kind of talk through, I'll pop that baby out.
Yeah,
and show
so
it.
the first movie was called Tape. We filmed it all on mini DV tapes. Maybe a little bit of high 8 tapes as well. Yeah, one of these units. Yeah, those. Yep. The second one, me and Hunter both had these HVXs, and they film HD footage on these P2 cards.
HD, baby.
HD, 720 60p. You'll kind of recognize this card if you have the shirt from P2. It's like the logo that went with it. So yeah, we filmed. It was basically format-based thing.
That was a catch.
That was a catch. We filmed the second movie all on these things, P2 cards. Maybe there was like a couple SD card clips, but yeah, that was basically the thing. We were super hyped on snowboarding and skating, which are very hyped on these cameras and a certain style of filming. So we just wanted to keep that rolling. Decided to call it P2 and kind of go from there. And it worked well because it was our second movie, so it was like part 2.
Part 2, yes.
Most people that I've talked to this summer have been like, dude, when's tape 3 coming out? Or when's P3 coming out? Which is sick. But nope, it's fully just the format that we filmed the joints on. That's kind of the whole thing there.
Yeah, I think it's cool, and like it's kind of one of those things. If like if you have an HVX or you've ever used an HVX, you can kind of understand why it was P2. But it was never explicitly stated why it was called that. But anyways, to talk about the movie itself, the level of riding was stepped up significantly from tape. Do you want to kind of walk me through the process the crew had as a whole going into the second movie, to kind of step up the riding?
Yeah, so first of all, timing was a huge part of this. Me and Matt got back from the Philippines. I go straight back to Elevated. COVID's starting to heat up. It becomes a thing. Lockdown happens. Hannah, Menega, and Matt both get it's like a Tuesday, and they get the rest of the week off of school and work. And they're like, sick because of COVID. And I'm like, well, I'm living in this camper at Elevated. You guys should just come here. And they're like, cool. So they came for basically 3 to 4 days. They brought like 5 days worth of clothing with them. They're there through the weekend. We hit like 1 or 2 winch spots. We rode at Elevated. It was very good vibes. Wes Huber was also living at the park at that time. Jake and Ethan might have been around a little bit. Can't totally remember. And, the vibes are good. And then basically everything got canceled indefinitely. And we were just living at a wakeboard park with a winch that actually worked. Shout out Morgan and Grinch Winch. They didn't hook us up with the winch. He's just got this 12-year-old winch that still starts every time. It's a beautiful piece of machinery.
That thing's got some clips on her too, right?
Dude, that thing's got some, basically, all of P2 is filmed with that winch pretty much. So we're there, and we're just riding cable every single day, getting pretty good, putting the finishing touches on the park, all working there, getting like whatever, a little bit of money. And then we'd go and winch around Greensboro, Raleigh, Charlotte, basically all the surrounding towns, and even security guards were not on work. All these huge office parks were just empty. Nobody was there. It was amazing. So like 2 or 3 days a week, and we were super motivated. Wes Huber had some solid winch experience. Me, Matt, and Hannah all just filmed tapes, so like we felt pretty solid as a crew, and we would just go to different winch spots, and we were like a really solid crew, and it was like so easy. The kick-out factor was like non-existent. So just the vibes were good, and we were able to hit some really sick spots, and we were definitely like ready to step it up too, riding wise. I think I was in particular for sure. Like I felt like comfortable. The last couple hits of tape, it was like I'm starting to be able to do some stuff and like feel good about this. And just learn the process of winching like a little bit more. So yeah, that was kind of how we got the ball rolling. And like, it was like May, and we had like 9 minutes of footage. And it was like, well, this is a very good start. Like, we basically have, like, enough to do a really cool project, like, right on. And we're like, no, we're going to keep waiting, going to keep filming. Eventually, Matt and Hannah go back. Hannah goes back to Michigan. The day she gets back to Michigan, it's, like, flooded in Grand Rapids. And I'm like, well, shit, we've been talking about this for a while. I'm like, yo, Morgan, is it cool if I go to, this is the, like, owner and operator of Elevated. Is it cool if I go to Michigan for a few days to winch? She's like, sure. So I, like, cruise up to Michigan. I got some solid clips. Hannah did too. Gibby got in the mix there. And, yeah, we got, like, some solid clips. I cruise back to Elevated. We continue to get clips here and there. A little bit of time goes by, and I'm just, like, chilling at Elevated. And Graham and JB are, like, planning to go to West Rock. And I'm like, oh, shit. Like, I'm trying to go to West Rock maybe. I had, like, for whatever reason, a decent little bit of money saved. And I was like, cool. Ended up linking up with Graham and JB. Stayed at Graham's parents' place in Ohio. We, like, hit the mega spillway and wherever it is, Florida.
Oh, yeah, Disney World.
yeah, Disney World for sure. And then we, that was super sick. And just to be with Graham and JB, I was feeling really good, like, about myself and my riding. Oh, Brady was there too. Brady was super sick. I hadn't really met him before that. Yeah, it just felt good being with people on that level, especially Graham. He's, like, trying to film his second video part of the year in a row at winch spots. So, like, that's where the bar is. And, like, I'm like, all right, I've been telling myself I can keep up, like, at this level. Can I keep up? Like, what's up? And, yeah, I think I proved myself that I could. You know, it felt good, like, the clips I was getting and the caliber of shit I was doing. Yeah, felt, like, really good. So I got a few clips on that trip and really helped get some, like, NAR factor in there, and it felt good. And then me and Wes Huber did another trip to Charleston, which is where, like, he went to college. We met up with Drew Glickman. Shout out Drew Glickman. Super good homie, just kills it on the photo and video game, and showed us all around Charleston, all the sick winch spots. Me and Wes probably got like 4 or 5 clips each. We got some clips of the homies that trip, but just lots of good trips that went really well. After that, Hannah and Gibby ended up coming back to Elevated for like 1 or 2 months, maybe even more than that, and we were all just piled in the camper once again at Elevated, living at a wake park, doing winch trips like here and there, you know, just like day trips, day missions. And then me and Gibby went down to Florida. We filmed some Lake Roanoke stuff. Yeah, that was in Gibby's part. And me and him both got some winch clips while we were down in Florida. Ended up meeting up. Like, Nick Walker helped us out for a day or 2. That was sick. Dylan Miller showed us a couple spots, or like hit us with some pins. Yeah, and just like trip after trip started to come together. And then basically, we, like, definitely had a full movie worth of shit. Like, everyone was solid. We had, I mean, because not only did we have a 30-minute movie, but, like, it's got all of 200 views. So if you want to go back and watch, like, all the other stuff, we have this thing called Discarded Matter that was, like, 18 more minutes
Sick
of winch footage.
Well,
maybe, like, 10 minutes of winch footage, 8 minutes of park stuff. And it was, like, the leftovers because I didn't want to put out a 55-minute movie. So, yeah, we had a lot of footage that year. But then we ended up doing, like, the road trip or winch trip of a lifetime. My dad got a camper, and he's like, Dylan, what's up? We going to, like, go on a trip or something? And I'm like, yeah, that sounds sick. He's like, we can do anything you want to do. And I'm like, he's like, even, like, a winch trip. I'm like, really? Like, you'd be down to do a winch trip? He's like, yeah. So this trip was amazing. The only thing we could have done better is decided where we were going. We decided to go through, like, the mountains of North Carolina and then Tennessee and then kind of make a loop back. And my dad was just, like, paying for, like, the gas in his truck and, like, us, all the campgrounds and stuff. So, like, that trip is, like, sponsored by my pops. Big shout out, Pops, on that one. And Hannah brought her van, and that's what we had the winch in and stuff. Then my dad was towing the camper with his truck, and we just, like, post up at night. It was me, Hannah, Gibby, Wes, and then Clark joined for, like, half of it. Yeah, and we hit a bunch of spots on that one. That trip ended up beating the shit out of us for sure. Hannah tore her ACL. I fucked up my calf. We got a gun pulled on us. Wes, like, cut open his arm. But
let's go into the gun story.
Okay,
I'd like to hear about that.
We still got a bunch of clips, and the trip was super sick. Like, absolutely trip of a lifetime. Clark got some sick ones. We winched, like, App State's campus, which, like, that's where he graduated school from.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Wes cuts his arm open. pretty big bummer. This spot was like super sick. We were at. I got some clips, dude. Go back and rewatch it. There's this like, you know how the little like there's a fish ladder next to the ledge. Hannah was gonna ride up that thing. She was like fully down. So she might have died or got like the clip, like the best clip of the movie. Like one of the two would have happened if Wes wouldn't have cut his arm open. But yeah, so Wes cuts his arm open. This is just too good not to say. Yeah, Wes cuts his arm open. I'm like, all right, Hannah, you deal with Wes. Make sure he doesn't like pass out and like wrap up his arm. I'll pack up the car. I'm like packing up the car, putting the winch in and everything. We're like going pretty quick. Wes is losing like quite a bit of blood. It's like a somewhat serious situation. And we're just like, yeah, like we're just going to be quick and get you to the hospital as quick as an ambulance could get here was like our thought process. We're packing everything up. We get everything in the car real quick. We're cruising to the hospital. It's kind of far away. It's like a 30-minute drive. We're 10 minutes down the road. I'm like, all right, winch, cameras, we got all the stuff. I'm like, I was bringing my dog along at the time, Prince dog. And I was like, did anybody grab the dog? Just dead silent. I'm like, no, we left. I left my dog, Prince, at the spot, which was not sick at all. We get to the hospital and they're like, oh, this is like a veterans only hospital. So we drove like 10 minutes further, finally get Wes into a hospital. He's like going into shock the whole time. He's like got to pay his insurance bill on the way there because it's overdue. We finally get Wes in the hospital. I turn around, go back, get the dog. He's like still there, but like neck like pushed up against the pole. He ran around it like 100 times.
Oh,
yeah. But, yeah, Prince was all good. Dog was all good. But, yeah, so that happened. It was super hectic. Wes is not hyped. Obviously. He's in, like, tons of pain. Said no to, like, any painkillers and is just trying to make, like, little weed edibles in my dad's camper to try to help with the pain. But, yeah, just not stoked, obviously. He just got, like, a bunch. He had, like, 18 stitches or something in his arm. It was a super major thing. And he, like, didn't have any pharmaceutical painkillers, so the pain was heavy. So he decided to rent a car and drive home. The next day, we go to this, like, not that sick little dock spot that ideally, like, Hannah could get some ledge tricks at, but it ended up being really tall. So I rode because I was like, well, we're here. It's like we're on a winch trip. It wasn't very successful so far. We got some clips. I ride, get a couple clips. This lady comes down and is like, do you guys live here? And it's like, no. And, like, dude, we're so over it at this point. Wes is already, like, driving home. It's just me, Hannah, and Gibby. We got one angle. We got Hannah standing on the dock with a fisheye. It's like, we're not even that hyped on the spot. And I'm like, no, but I'm going to go one more time, and then we're going to leave. And I said it just like that because, like, we were just fucking over it. We'd gotten kicked out a bunch that year. It was the last trip of the year. We already had a movie film. This was just, like, bonus. We were there. We were going to winch. And she's like, no, you're not. And I'm like, yeah, I am. I'm going to go one more time, and then we're going to leave, and we're going to be out of your hair. To these people's defense, we had to walk past like 9 private property HOA signs. So it was well signed for sure. Definitely well signed. And I was like, well, worst case scenario, it's like a big kerfluffle and the cops get called and we explain what happened and maybe we get a little ticket. But whatever, worth the risk. Yeah, we start riding. This lady stands on the rope, and, like, dude, we're just so over it. I'm like, dude, fuck this. Like, Gibby, start the winch. Like, with her standing on the rope. Gibby starts up the winch like a man, like, attaboy Gib for just letting her rip. And then she gets off the winch, and she, like, steps out of the way. I come off the grass. You can hear in the background of the clip, you're going to jail! You're going to jail! She's, like, freaking out. I, like, grease like a backlip same way, like got the clip money and was like, sick, let's go. But unfortunately we had to walk with the winch back past these people to like load up the car. So we're walking the winch back, and at this point her like husband or boyfriend or who knows who, but an older man with like white hair came out. This lady is like in her like early 50s, like probably like mid 40s honestly. Yeah, he comes out and he's like, you guys need to stop right now, and like has his arms crossed and shit, and we're like walking with the winch back. I'm like, we're not. I'm like, yeah, we're not doing that. Again, like we're all over it. Like generally I try to be pretty polite, but it's like, dude, one more try and then we'll leave. Like that's what we'd been running all year. Like somebody's kicking us out, we're like, we're sorry, we know we're not supposed to be here. One more try and then we'll leave. And we've been getting the clip like on last try, like a third of the time, so it's always worth it. Yeah, and then he, like, pulls out this little revolver out of his pocket. And at this point, Gibby and Hannah are kind of in front of me with the winch, I think. And I just had, like, my wakeboard. And I'm like, dude, shoot me. Like, are you serious? Like, shoot me. And he was like, and kind of just like put the gun back in his pocket and then just grabbed onto my wakeboard. And I'm just dragging this like 65-year-old man. He's still like up on his feet. I didn't knock him over, but he's just like skiing behind me in the grass. And I'm just like ripping him through the grass. And I'm like, Hannah and Gibby are just like staring at me. I'm like, go get the car. So they like roll up to the car. And then the girl who was like there the whole time, she's like, help, 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 in this like very nice like suburban neighborhood, and it's full on like panic level screams, like, I mean, just like gnarly crime is like being committed.
Everyone in their house is hearing it.
Is her vibe at this point. So the whole neighborhood squad lines up, and we got like a makeshift like squad of linebackers blocking our car before we know it. We can't get the winch in there, and I'm just like trying to distract them because in my brain I'm like, oh, like people are stupid, like we just get the winch in and drive away and like boom, we're done, we're out of here, and that's that, and we have like this weird story to tell. Dude like pulls out the gun again. I'm like, dude, put your fucking gun. I'm like, either shoot me or put the gun away. And he like put the gun away. And then like this lady like sits on the winch so we can't put it in the car. And at this point I got a little escalated, not like super proud of this. I was like freshly sober and not really dealing with anything at the time. But like, yeah, so like a lot of aggression built up, and I was like, just fucking hit me, you bitch. And was just like screaming in her face, just trying to get her to hit me. Cause I'm like, maybe if she punches me and like Hannah films it, cause Hannah was filming, then like we can just fucking leave. Cause I'm so over this, and I'll so take like a black eye to just like leave right now. So I'm screaming in her face, and she's not taking the bait. She's like getting more flustered, but not punching me. So I'm like, fuck. Then I tell Hannah, I'm like, because they're like kind of pushing me and Gibby like pretty hard, but like we're able to stay on our feet because they're like adults and you know, not very fit. And I'm like, just film this. I'm gonna kind of like take a flop. So like the dude pushes me and I flop super hard. We can insert some
Soccer
footage.
flop.
I'll send some of this.
We'll
this
put it
iPhone footage because it's pretty good. It's worth watching. The environment was heated.
Yeah, you're not. No, you're not because you're going to jail.
Oh my God!
Come on. He'll stay down. We are.
Oh God!
Help!
Do it again.
Help! Billy, come help! Billy! Help! Stop!
One more. Come on.
You're going to jail, dude. Steady, move. You're going to jail. You are a pathetic piece of shit.
We're trying to leave.
No, you done screwed up all my property. And he done tried to run over me.
It's all.
And it's all on your big video camera that you're videoing.
We're trying to leave right
It's
now.
over. Your ass is going
It
to jail.
is over, and we're trying to leave.
But yeah, I send a couple flops, and it's just not happening. And finally, it's just obvious that it's like just not gonna work. So I kind of go like sit in the corner. And we're like, whatever, we'll just wait for the cops. I guess this is what's happening. My dog was in the car at the time, the one we left at the spot the day before. And I'm like, can I like let my dog out? He's like in the car, and it's like hot. It's like we're in Tennessee. And she's like, nope, the cops can let your dog out when you're going to jail. And I'm like, all right, lady, all right. And Gibby's like trying to get water, and she's like blocking our car. She's like, nope, no, you can't, no, you can't. And meanwhile, they keep thinking we're trying to delete the footage of us hitting the spot. She's like, you're going to go in there and delete that footage. I'm like, are you kidding me? That shit is gold. You can hear you screaming in the background, and I greased my back lip same way. Yeah, and all that's like going down. It's just like super hectic. And finally, the vibe kind of calms down, and they're like, the other people who like aren't the Karen and her boyfriend or whatever are like, so what did you guys do? And Karen starts like freaking out. And they're like, no, shut the fuck up, Karen. Like, kid, what were you doing? I'm like, we travel around. We're filming for this wakeboard movie. We were wakeboarding here. We saw the no trespassing signs. And she's like, see, did someone get that on camera? He said they saw him. And I'm like, yep, we did. And then, and we maybe scratched some paint off your dock. And we really didn't, to my knowledge. I was like checking after every try, and like, it was not. It was like an old dock. It was like, you know, we had to like hammer in a couple screws once we got, or like a couple nails once we got there to not catch them. It wasn't like a nice dock we were hitting. And the neighbors, you can tell they're just like, oh my God. Because we told them, we're like, dude, this kid's 15 and you're pushing him to the ground like Gibby, because he was 15 at the time. And Karen's just like, well, juvie sucks just as much as jail. But like the neighbors were not on that vibe. So the neighbors were like, fuck, what did we just do?
Yeah.
Cops show up. Of course, just like, you know, any like full grown adult male who shows up to a spot to kick you out is like usually like, yeah, you gotta leave. But like I did some shit like this when I was 18 too, like, you know, and then they flex it. This guy like snuck into like Pine Knob, this like resort in East Michigan, like the ski resort that's like super cool. Like they're killing it these days with their park. But yeah, he's all hyped up on the vibes. I mentioned that this other guy had a gun and he's like, what? Are you serious? This guy had a gun. He's like, fuck, let me see the footage. We show the footage that like I think it showed the gun and it like shows him like, or people pushing us to the ground. And he's like, fuck, like, do you guys want to press charges? I'm like, no, not unless they press charges. Like, I want to leave. And I think at the same time, this is when like some police killings were going on. And I think something just happened like in the district that was like, wasn't a killing, but it was like this.
Not a good look.
Yeah. And they were just like not hyped to be here dealing with this shit. It was like, are you serious? So they were pretty much just like 100% on our side. And they're like, look, obviously you guys fucked up and trespassed, but like, obviously they made it way worse. But like, you guys know that this whole situation was like your fault. And we're like, we do. We really like, we're sorry. Like this is the worst it's ever come to, like my bad. And we'll put in some clips of like me talking shit back and forth to Karen. She's like, what did you think was going to happen? I'm like, well, this is pretty much the worst case scenario, like for sure. And she's like, what? And you guys just like don't care about no trespassing signs at all? Like, what made you think this was going to be a good spot? And it's like, we could walk the rope back. The ledge was about the right height. It was pretty buttery.
Bunch of shit she wouldn't understand.
Yeah,
like.
and she was just, yeah. But, yeah, that was pretty much, that was our gnarliest, most hectic kick out. And then next day, and then in this process, I dropped the winch on my calf. So I could, like, still ride if it really came down to it, but I was pretty injured. I had well over a full part of winch footage. I felt good about it. Next day, we go to this like drop spot. Hannah kind of hurts herself. I like carry her back to the car, but she's like a champ, like champ's champ. So like me and Gibby are just like solo in Gatlinburg, Tennessee, which is this like tourist zone, like out by Dollywood and stuff. And like all these people are lined up on the bridge watching us. So I just pick out some like random like 16-year-old girl, looks like she probably can take like decent iPhone photos. I'm like, hey, come down here. And I get her to come down and I get her to film a second angle. I hand her my HVX and I got a tripod. Gibby hits it a few times. Hannah starts to like feel better in the car. We like check on her, make sure she doesn't want to go to the hospital. She's like, no, like I think I'm good. It just like blew out my knee, feels a little funny. Like I don't really know. Yeah, so like we're just all hurt. We're all so defeated. We have another like 4 days of this trip planned, but we're like, fuck. Gibby's like the only one who can ride. So we just go to Dollywood and have like the sickest day ever on some roller coasters. I like push Hannah around on a wheelchair and she like gets it and just like walking around like in lines and stuff and just have the sickest day ever at an amusement park and ended up cruising home. And that was the end of that winch trip. But yeah, ended up Hannah tore her ACL and fully handled it for some roller coasters for like 8 hours after.
Unreal.
Yeah.
Some people
Respect.
just, built different, I guess. I was going to ask if there's any financial backing for this movie, but I think you, there was a little bit, right? For the magazine.
Yeah. So
Okay.
Slingshot helped out. They covered the magazine. That was kind of a back and forth. Both Adam Sinclair and Jeff McKee helped out with that and Slingshot in general. So that was super sick. Quint at Steve's helped out with both of the movies. He helped us print some apparel and just helped us out with that. And in return, we put we were repping both brands pretty hard in both the films. We threw logos in there. We tagged them in all the Instagram stuff. And I'd say we probably, as a whole, spent more of our own money than we got helped out, but it was super sick. We were able to like make some money. And I know this last movie that they just filmed, Nature of Offense, hopefully it's out by the time this comes
Better
out.
be out, Gibby. If it's not
Gibby,
out by now,
come on
oh
now.
my God.
It better be out. But it
Shit's
was super
been done
sick.
for a
But
while.
yeah, we were able to build up a little bank account and they got some trips paid for. Oh, and then I went on a trip too, like for Nature of Offense and, gas. And we pretty much just crashed with homies, but like some pizzas were paid for from just profits from the previous movies. So that was super cool. We were doing it either way. They were passion projects through and through, but it was really rad that some brands helped out and supported. Also, Vedatech, Daniel at Vedatech helped out, helped us out with the trip. We threw some ads in the magazine and same thing, some logos. And yeah, it was super cool to get that support from those companies and just get a little help. And, Slingshot flowing you know, a lot of us boards and helping out big time there, and Ronix helping out Gibby. It's really almost impossible to winch if you're paying even half price for boards.
Yeah.
Like, if you paid $250 for a board and then like, or 2 boards, like, are you really gonna like grind one on concrete? Like, you could break the other one, and that, yeah. So it was very helpful. Like, big shout out to those companies for supporting.
100%. I do want to. I've got a couple. I just watched P2 the other day, and I think it was maybe 2 nights ago, and I got a couple clips of yours that I kind of want to talk about. You did just talk about Karen kicking you out. It seems like there was a male Karen that kicked you guys out of. It was a concrete elbow ledge up in Michigan here. Does that have a decent story behind it? Or?
Yeah, kind of. We're up in Michigan, so this is when it flooded, and we drove up to Michigan. Now, just to paint some context, I'm at the time in North Carolina at Elevated in Lexington, North Carolina, a very right-leaning area of the country. They are not down with the COVID lockdown. Like, it's just not a thing. They're basically fucking ignoring it. Or, you know, we were still locked down to a certain degree, without a doubt. Like, there was a curfew and this and that, and things were affected, but not too heavy. You could still go into a restaurant with a mask and get food. Not a big deal. I go up to Michigan on this trip in, like, whatever, May, June. COVID's much more of a thing in Michigan, it turns out. And, yeah, we roll up to this one spot, and we just had to jump the fence to get in. But meanwhile, this guy, like, unlocks the gate because it's, like, a canoe boat launch for, like, this local HOA. And he unlocks the door for, like, a patron of the HOA. Like, he just happens to have the key. And the guy who had the key was really stoked on what we were doing. His kid, like, wrote it action. Not, like, a ton, but here and there. And was like, this is so cool. But, like, some of the other people in this neighborhood are not so stoked. Like, you know, so I would definitely be in and out like squeeze you can. But I think this is awesome. And then this other dude that he let in, like, launched his canoe. We get some clips, and we get a clip or two. And I'm going, or Gibby gets a clip, and I'm going. Dude comes back on his canoe and immediately rolls up. He's like, you guys are done. You're done right now. And I'm like, yeah, no, I got another, nope. I'm like, going to get this in 2 tries. Like, we are not done right now. I'm like, we'll leave soon. Like, I'm sorry that you're pissed off. Like, that's unfortunate. It's not our intention here, but we just spent an hour grinding this ledge down. Like, it looks better than when we got here. Like, it's polished now.
Yeah.
Yeah, nah. And he was super not stoked. You know, tensions were high. It was during COVID. He was locked down. He's probably like, you motherfuckers are going to be the reason I can't use my canoe again. Or what, you know, who knows?
Yeah.
But not stoked. And it ended up like, we were just like, yeah, fuck this guy. And it was like Hannah, Gibby, and Koji, who are like 15 at the time. And they're like at the spot. And like, it's like one of their first times winching. So like, we really don't want to get like kicked out or like cops involved and their parents involved. Like, that is not the goal. But I'm like, dude, fuck this. I'm trying to get one more try. So I like walk the rope out. Homie's like grabbing the rope, like ripping it. And I'm just like skiing with my booties on in the grass, like not letting go of the rope. Finally, he gives up and goes and gets a knife. And I'm like, fuck. And I'm trying to like strap in real quick. And then he just like can't cut the knife with the rope. Or can't cut the rope with the knife. He's like blowing it super heavy. And Gibby is able to start up the winch.
Shout out Gibby for always starting the winch.
Shout out Gibby. Yep. And then, and I got my little backboard, just pretzel 270 out. And then, and then he's yelling at me, like freaking out. That's what that little clip is. Like, gotta fucking go right now, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Like, just flexing super heavy. And and then we pieced out with the clip, and it was great. Rope still in one piece and continued to clip up.
Beautiful. That was a good clip.
Yeah.
Sick ledge there. Bare-chested spillway bomb. What's the story with going almost naked on that one?
Yeah. So that was with that was the one in Orlando or wherever
Disney
it is.
World.
Who knows?
It's at Disney World.
Yeah,
apparently.
But yeah, I was with Graham and JB on that one, and a lot of people in the wakeboard world, pretty much nobody except for maybe like you, was supporting my no vest, no helmet vibe. I just had grown up watching Shred Town. I was watching a lot of GX 1000 videos at the time of dudes just like, doing gnarly hill bombs on skateboards. I'm fucking dumb. I'm kind of depressed at the time. I don't really fucking care if I die. It's like, yeah, whatever. That'd be a pretty cool way to go at a winch spot. Fuck yeah. Kind of like a selfish thought in hindsight, but that's just where my head was at. And I like could just focus all my energy into this thing, and it was just in my eyes like slightly cooler if I did it without a vest or helmet. So it's like, yep, we're running that. Why not? So yeah, we roll up to this spot. Graham and JB fully, they have like pro model vests, and like, you know, Hyperlight is like not down with like their pro riders not wearing helmets. And like Slingshot wasn't like telling me to not wear a helmet by any means. Like anyone in Slingshot who would say anything would be like, you should probably put on a helmet, bud. But I was like, yeah, no.
But they're also like, you're not on the team, like you're not getting paid or anything. So it's like, what? I mean, kid wants to fucking go naked down this thing.
Like, all right, what? I hope he doesn't die, but whatever. So yeah, I roll up there. I jump down it. Graham did his trick. He just did a couple stale fishes down it, was kind of butt checking, not really handling it because there wasn't a lot of water running down it at the time. Or he was handling it, but it was just a little sketchy. JB jumped down it once or twice and wasn't really getting the landing. And he's like, fuck it, I jumped down it. Like, YouTube doesn't care if I land or not, which is like very true. That's all he was getting the clips for. And then I get down and like, it's just like bombing like an icy hill on a snowboard. So I like felt pretty in control. And I was also on a solo. I had channels on my board. I think that helped a lot. And yeah, just, it felt good. It felt in control. I did it with a vest and helmet like 2 times, and I get up to the top and I'm like, Graham, what do you think about me going like no vest, no helmet, and just like silent, like just doesn't say a thing? Or maybe he said something and it was like, you probably shouldn't do that. And I was like, yeah, fuck it. And like took off my helmet and vest. And I was like, I got this shit. And just, because I wasn't about to do like a 360 or like a fucking backflip down it. So I'm like, how can I make this gnarlier? And I'm like, well, this is pretty much the same trick as the Ender video part of the year. I'm doing it with no shirt on. And that's how it went. And I got it first tee and it was sick. And like, yeah, that was that. I did feel bad because I was like, fuck, if these guys have to like take me to the hospital because I like hit my head or like rip my chest open and they were not down, that's like kind of a dick move. Versus like with my crew who was like not supportive, but not like telling me, like not throwing out vibes that it's not cool. It's a little different, but I handled it and I mean,
it's a cool clip. I feel like people can do whatever they want, you know, as long as, like you said, if you're with the crew and they're down, like...
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely stupid. Like,
yeah, for sure.
I wear a helmet and a vest sometimes when I winch now. Yeah, there's just no reason not to. But at the time, I was hyped, and that was the vibe. And I felt really, really good and confident on my board and on a winch and at that spot. And that's what I went with. And then going up that spot was amazing.
Yeah.
Super quick, like, run backs. You could just, like, swim to the edge, bomb down the spillway with the handle in your hand, and then you'd have enough speed where you just turn around and try again. I'm talking like a try every 45 seconds.
That's
sick.
Was sick. That just sounds like a lot of fun.
Yep.
The picnic table to bicycle kind of tire spin thing.
We show up to this park in Charleston. It's like there's like 200 people there. No chance. We're gonna get kicked out immediately. It's like I think there's like a cemetery or it's like a memorial park. No chance. It just shits down rain for like 10 minutes. We're still there, and it's like, well, there's nobody here anymore. This spot isn't really a spot. What can we do? And we found a picnic table, like, way in the corner. We were very resourceful this year. We were making shit happen. Like, if we rolled up to a spot, we were getting clipped up. A lot of it ended up in discarded matter.
Yeah.
But we were making stuff happen. We were getting clips. So we find this long picnic table. We bring it over. I think I got a couple clips. Yeah, so I got a clip or two. And then at the end, it was like brushed concrete. So like instead of jumping up on the concrete at the end, you just kind of sink and then try to catch yourself on the concrete. And I did that. And just like when I went down, I was like on something. And I'm like, this kind of feels like a bike. So I like unstrapped in the pond and picked it up. I'm like, dude, this is a bike. This is hilarious. And like this sandwich snowboard video had recently came out where they were jibbing the fuck out of a bike and making the tires spin. And this thing had one front tire on it. And like Wes still hadn't ridden. And like maybe there were some other homies there who hit the spot who hadn't ridden. So I'm like, I'm going to let them ride. But then like, if there's time, like I'm jibbing this fucking bicycle for sure. And everyone got their clips and there was time and I put the bike out. And that was one that people like weren't telling me like, no, I'm trying to leave, but they were not hyped on. Like I had to push. It was like it was kind of time to go. Like everyone was over it. Everyone had already gotten clipped up. And I'm like, nah, I'm jibbing this bicycle. That is going down. And like second, third try. I think first try is what went in the video.
Or it hits it and the bike kind of rocks back and forth a little bit.
And the tire spins and it's perfect. And Wes filmed it money.
So good. That was Wes that filmed that.
Yeah, Wes perfectly. Shouts. And it was sick. And that was that. Drew Glickman was there at that spot too. He might have left at that point. And yeah, his girlfriend at the time, I believe they're married now, but Brittany, she was there too, like helping out on B cam. It was sick.
Sick.
Yep.
Another clip, the back 3 into the spillway. That's a different spillway than
Yep.
the previous one.
Yeah, that
we were
one's
talking
in
about.
Rockford.
And there was little to no water when you backed
Yeah,
into that.
but it was sick because there was like a thick coat of algae,
Okay.
and that spot's pretty much a no-go. Like at this point, like just they are very not hyped on wakeboarders going there, and we definitely got like some written warnings last time. All of our licenses are like, yeah, that thing's kind of burnt at this point. But yeah, so I jumped down that thing in tape just like once randomly after seeing Graham jump down the mega one, and I'm like, I could do it. So I went there, jumped down it. It was sick. Didn't really even like ride away, and the clip is fucking horrible. Sorry, Matt, but that was just piss.
Oh, it's just terrible, dude. So bad. Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, so I roll back, and Graham had already done his backflip, and there's like a story there, but I don't really think we need to get into it. There was just like a little drama. Spot got kind of heated. There were some bros crying at the spot. Long story short, and everybody kissed and made up, and the vibes were good, and kind of like I think the sun literally came back out, and it was like, all right, some other people could ride after Graham did his backflip and got like a good clip. And yeah, we were there, and I'm like, back one. I want back one. Back one's fucking heavy because I got to go down this thing, switch, and handle pass into it. That's heavier than back 3 for sure. And I was hyped on it, and I was with Graham, Brady, and JB, and Graham had just backflipped into it, dude. So doing like a front one was like out of the question. Like, I'm trying to keep up with this dude. That's like the whole point. I'm like, I'm not trying to prove anything to anyone else, but like to myself. I'm like, I'm here. I'm at the top of my game. Shit's feeling good. I'm healthy. I'm on this trip. Like, let's do this. Yeah, still no vest, no helmet. I think I was wearing this shirt. Yeah, nice.
Damn, she's still crisp.
I don't know about
I mean-
that. I got some stainage, but yeah. But yeah, I'm at the top of it. I jumped down at regular once, and then I jumped down at switch once, and just went like really tiny. And it's like feeling good because of like the algae landing pad. And then yeah, I'm at the top, and I was like getting into some Wim Hof method at the time, so I'm like.
Loading that brain up with oxygen.
Yep, just loading up. I'm like really hyping myself up. There was a girl like up at the top watching me. It was like, maybe she was kind of cute. I don't really know, but in my brain, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm putting on for this girl like right now. She like in hindsight, she's probably like 16 or something. But I was like, that wasn't the point. I wasn't actually trying to impress her. I was just trying to get myself to commit. And I'm like, oh yeah, because she's like, are you gonna jump down that? I'm like, oh yeah, this one's for you. And winch started up, and I like committed to the back one. I smacked my back like hard as fuck on it, but like adrenaline was going. It felt good. Did another try, did the exact same thing. I got to the bottom, and like the homies weren't like, yo, we're trying to leave. But also like the vibes were not high.
Yeah.
Like Graham had already backflipped, and they're like, this back one is cool, but like Graham was really the only one who was into filming winch parts, and like he was stoked for me, but also like, here's just this like random sponsored kid who gets like a couple boards a year, like doing a comparable trick at the same spot. He just did probably his ender of hopefully video part of the year. It kind of knocks his shit a little bit. So it was like, there wasn't a lot of stoke. And I'm like, I like asked Graham and JB, I'm like, should I just do like back 3 and get it first try? And they're just like, yeah. So I was like, all right. And just committed to a back 3, kind of like put my hand down, rode away. Felt amazing. And yeah, ender the part. That's how she went.
It was a sick clip. I didn't know you were going for back 1 there before that, but
Yeah.
very
It
cool.
worked out well. I think back 3's hype. And I don't think many people would have understood that back 1 is significantly harder.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah. But it's cool because it gave me confidence when we went back the next year to talk about doing a back 5, and then we got kicked out.
There you go. Would have happened for sure if you didn't get kicked out. Moving to something more recently, kind of the trip you're currently on. I think it's important to talk about. You're kind of heating up right now. The boy's
up,
hot.
dude.
The boy's
I'm,
hot.
Yeah, I'm heating up.
So talk about the Space Mountain Park series. You won the golden ticket, and you got what, 3rd there?
Yep.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So that was good. I spent this whole winter getting being at home, getting some just like clean time, and just pushing the reset button a little bit. I didn't want to live with like the mountains or the ocean right outside my doorstep, just because it's just so easy to like escape my problems, and I was trying to face them bitches. So that's kind of what this winter was about. I had got my like EMT certificate at the local community college and just kind of pressed the reset button. I was going to a bunch of workout classes, just kind of trying to get my head right and just like feel good about being in my own skin. And it was cool. I learned like a lot about myself and a lot about how I react to things and whatnot. And I was very excited to take a contest serious for the first time in my life. I also was planning or did the like slalom for a cause events, which yeah, there it is.
That's a good one.
Yeah. Which yeah, the slalom for a cause, basically we set up a slalom course on the cable and just cruised around it. Yeah, if you're like near the next one, show up and I'll tell you all the rules.
A lot of fun. A
A lot of fun. Good times. Raised some money for charity, so that was sick. But also, I was trying to like take some contests serious this summer because I had never done that before. I'd never taken a contest like really seriously and like tried to see if I could do it. Like no excuses, like none of this, that, like, oh, contests aren't my thing. I'm a street guy, whatever. Like, fuck that. Like, no, I'm trying to take it serious and like see what'll happen. So I show up to West Rock like a week early and I like got pretty dialed on the setup, which felt great. And yeah, the whole contest was super good. It was rad. I got to know like Pedro and Alex Albach pretty well the week prior, just hanging out with them, driving them around a little bit. And then all the Space Mob boys came up from Valdosta. I know them pretty well. They'd come to Elevated here and there. Just, I know that all of them pretty well at this point. So that was sick, just having all the homies around. And then, yeah, I just decided to take it seriously. I had a run that I felt really dialed about. I had been practicing it like the days prior to the contest, which is something I would have never done in the past. I've been like, oh, that shit's whack. You just got to go out and flow. And if it happens, it happens. Nah, fuck that, dog. I'm here for results. I'm trying to win.
It's a contest.
Like,
You're there to win.
Pedro, Albach, Derry, and like some other really good wakeboarders were there, like riding in it. But like, whatever, like, I'm a good wakeboarder, and it doesn't matter who the best wakeboarder is. That's not what the contest is. It's like who's putting down the best run and who's going to win the contest that day. And I'm like, you know what? Pedro could drop the handle. He didn't, but he could. I meditated on it. I tried. I did what I could do. But yeah, so I just took it seriously and put down like a solid run and made it through finals and then ended up getting third in the contest. And yeah, and there was like another run. You got like 2 tries in qualifiers, and my first one I felt really good about, and second one I kind of botched early on, so I ended up just like sending a 1-footer over this like pretty big gap, which like I felt good about. I was talking to Gibby about it before my run, and then I'm like, fuck, it's now or never. Next thing I knew, my foot was out of the binding, and I'm like, well, you're gonna look like a giant bitch now if you don't do this 1-footer. So I just like committed. It wasn't the best, but I sent it, and everyone was like, damn, that was sendy. I think that definitely helped out with the golden ticket, but yeah, felt good, rode good, and I got third in the contest, won myself a little bit of bisque, and yeah, got the ticket. Yeah,
sick. Yeah, that was a sweet live stream. Definitely worth tuning in for. This won't be out before the Elevated stop, but it'll definitely be out before yard sale, which obviously
taking a dub there because I'm heating up. I'm gonna be on fire by the time this comes out.
All right, yeah, let's talk about the second party heating up. Action just had Action Wake Park here in West Michigan just had a competition they've been doing for the past couple of years called Rail Garden Rampage, and you took the dub there.
Took the dub
in a heated head-to-head matchup. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So this event is super cool. It takes some influence from a like really cool Midwest snowboarding event. And it's head-to-head bracket. It's by far the most entertaining wakeboard event that I've like ever been a part of. And like I've ran quite a few on my own, so like that's saying something. And they've been damn entertaining. Oh, yeah. So yeah, this thing was super sick. The head-to-head bracket was awesome. I had a run that I felt really dialed about. I kind of went robot mode on them for sure. I just had one run that I felt really good about with like one audible that if I needed to bust out, I could. And I just stuck that run flawlessly, and it just brought me through to head-to-head with Gib. Right before the finals.
Yeah.
And I fell trying to step it up. My rock, paper, scissors luck was not on point up to that point. I had not won one match on rock, paper, scissors. So I went first. I fell on my run. Gibby advances, but this contest is really cool. You got to lose twice. So I go against Bo, and then my rock, paper, scissors did start to heat up for me. Yeah, and I won. So Bo went first. He fell on his run, so I went through. And since you have to lose twice, I would have had to beat Gibby twice to win this.
Yeah,
contest.
so I guess for the listeners and people who don't understand how it works, it's a head-to-head bracket. So it's a double elimination. So it's a bracket that works itself through, and if you lose at any point in any of those head-to-head matchups, it's just one run. If you lose any of those head-to-head matchups, you go to a loser's bracket or last chance qualifier, basically. And you got to work your way all the way through that bracket, the loser's bracket, to get back to the winner. So if you do work your way all the way through the loser's bracket, you go against, the guy who won the first bracket, but you have to beat him twice because to lose the contest, you have to lose twice, obviously, because, if you win,
So what happened was
whatever.
I dropped down to the last chance bracket and then made it to finals. So I would have had to beat Gibby twice to win the contest. We go rock, paper, scissors. I won, right? And I greased the back five. That's what happened, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
so,
and then you fell.
So
or
Gibby
whatever.
won the rock, paper, scissors. I go first. I greased my run with a 1-up.
Yeah.
So I'm hyped, and I know this puts the pressure on for Gibby, where he's got to land a trick that he's only landed one time before, or at least that's what he thinks in his head. Who knows what the judges actually would have decided? But the pressure was on. I put on. It was solid, and Gibby goes out and falls. Next time I win the rock paper scissors. Gibby goes out and falls halfway through his run. So all I really have to do is go out and put on a run. But I turn around and I look at some homies on the dock, and I'm like, I got to do the back five again, right? And they're like, yeah. They're like, if you want to. But yeah. And I'm like, all right, fuck yeah. So I went out. I fell on the same feature Gibby fell on, and the judges are like, fuck. Are you serious, Dylan? You couldn't have just finished the run and ended this contest?
If you would have made it one more feature, it would have been done because you would
I
have
could have
hit more
just
stuff
straight
than him.
aired them both, and probably
For sure. And the
they
rock,
wouldn't
paper
have loved it, but I would have won.
For sure. The rock, paper, scissors is to determine who goes first,
Yeah.
by the way. The loser, rock, paper, scissors goes first because the advantage is to go second.
Yeah, so
Anyways.
this was the second round of the finals. This is winner takes all, and we basically tied. And the judges are like, Dylan, are you down to go again? Because all the people are like, rebate. And I was like, yeah, fuck yeah, I'm down. I was really hyped. That was the one time I dropped my I'm here to win. This is no, I already won some money. I'm here with my homie Gibby in the finals. This is sick. This is a good vibe. I've been going robot mode all day.
There
We
was,
gotta put on for the people.
There was quite a few people watching.
Yeah.
The shore was lined. There was a lot of people.
Yeah,
there.
so it was good. And I fell. So we went one more time. I won the rock, paper, scissors. Gibby blows it, falls second feature off the dock.
A same way 270 or something.
Yeah, just
super
full,
easy.
landed the trick and just I don't know, got nervous,
Dropped
dropped
the
the handle.
handle.
And I'm like, well, you blew it, kid. And I went and put down a run and won me some bisque. Got first.
Yeah, that was super sick. It was, everybody who was there was very entertained. Like you said, it was one of the most entertaining, contests out there. So shout out to them for putting it on. That was a lot of fun. I don't have anything else here. Before we wrap this up, obviously, anything else you want to say? Anything you want to get off your mind? Anyone you want to thank?
Yeah,
I'll go
big
grab your
shouts
t-shirt
to a
while
lot
you're
of
saying that.
people. Morgan at Elevated, always helping me out. Dan at West Rock, no doubt. There's been a ton of people throughout my journey that just continue to make board sports something worth doing and pursuing, and that's really what it is. It's the people and the memories. There's really too many to name, but if you know who you are, you're in there. The whole ZMT crew, all of them, and just all the people who've helped me out and kind of lended a couch or whatever, just an ear to listen to throughout the time, and I'm sure I got lots more that I could say, but I feel this was a really solid talk, and we definitely covered a lot of shit and seemed to cover it pretty good up to this point. So yeah, stoked that you're doing this. We've been just like Tape and P2, we've been talking about a legit podcast for a long time. I was asking you this winter, I'm like, what are you up to? And you're like, I'm not going to tell you because you're just going to say I'm not actually doing it.
Yeah, that's
which
pretty
is true. That's what would have gone down. So
that is definitely true.
So yeah, here we are at in what will be transformed back into my bedroom in the next little bit.
Yeah,
I'm
we will
crashing
be
here at Hunter's house.
We are gonna undo the
but
studio,
we
but
made it look good, right, guys?
yeah,
Kinda?
come on. The lighting
Yeah.
definitely got darker at some point because we started this, 3 hours ago, and the sun
Yeah.
went down. But we're getting
We
we're
hung
getting
up
it
some
dialed.
photos. We got my cheddar bisque check up there.
1,000 there. We got Dom Hernler there. I don't know if you can see that. It's a sick photo Jeff took, and then obviously Space Mob there by the Golden Bear.
Yeah, and hopefully the ZMT stuff is out. There's probably some way to buy a t-shirt in a magazine, like DM the Instagram, or maybe we'll have like the website still going. But this next project, Nature of Offense, that was pretty much all Gibby and Hannah, and a lot of people wrote in it. But as far as like producing the whole thing, I was in the Outer Banks, kiteboarding, surfing, fucking off. There was that whole joint. Doesn't really seem relevant for this, but
another time we can talk about it
yeah,
for sure.
So me and you kind of did tape. P2 was like, it was a big group effort, but like I was the ringleader there. I was
edited almost all of it.
Yeah, I was getting everyone together. I was like planning out a lot of the trips. But this last movie, Nature of Offense, that's pretty much all Hannah and Gibby. Gibby edited the whole thing. I'd say Jake steals the show.
100%. Yeah, Jake has some mental clips.
Yep.
For
so
sure.
just to kind of clear up there, like who the fuck is ZMT? Like what's going on? That's the
rundown.
That's
pretty
basically. Yeah,
it's a lot of people, but there's definitely some people that like had each thing, and right now it's like Gibby and Hannah definitely did Nature of Offense, and obviously people filmed. Like I filmed some of it. You have some clips in it. You definitely filmed some of it, but that's.
Oh yeah, and then when we were getting kicked out of the Rockford Spillway, the title for that film kind of came from we got like warning tickets, and on it said Nature of Offense wakeboarding.
That's pretty sick. You sell that ticket or whoever?
Oh yeah, dude. Gibby's like, I'm taking down my World's trophy and I'm putting up this ticket.
Oh, that's what you like to see.
Yep. Yeah, dude. I think we did it.
I think we did the damn thing. Got you a t-shirt, some koozies. There's a bunch of stickers over there if you want them.
Oh yeah, we'll get stickered up.
We'll get stickered up.
It's looking good. You got a legit operation going here. Comfort colors.
Yep.
Yes, dog.
Yep. That's the good stuff, dude. 100% heavy cotton. That's what you.
Definitely asked me what size, and I said a large, but it's cool.
Well, there's a bunch over there. Is that XL?
Yeah.
Okay. Well.
But
Maybe,
it's cool.
maybe
I'm
a little.
down with baggy steez too.
There you go. All right. Well, I appreciate everybody for tuning in and listening or watching, however you're getting on there. All three of you. All three of you. You know, mom, dad, my sister. Well, she's in Germany, so she might not watch it. But all right. Thanks everyone. Thanks Dylan for coming on. I appreciate your time.
Yeah,
that
man.
was sick. See you guys later.